Welcome! You are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. As ever, I'm joined by my good friend Mark.
Hey, everybody.
Clem will be along shortly, he's assured us. But we're joined today by a very special guest. The guests don't get more special in the Mantic universe than Ronnie Renton. Ronnie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Hey there, I'm Brian.
And I'm Rick.
From Deadzone, the podcast.
And you're listening to Mantic Universe Podcast.
For everything Mantic under the sun.
Oh, it's lovely to have you on. So let's go straight into, so what are we talking about today? So we're going to have welcoming on the menu. We're going to have our introduction. Topic of the month is talking to Ronnie. We're going to talk Twilight Kin. We're going to talk about the new global campaign. We're going to talk a little bit on the sci-fi side. So loads and loads to discuss as usual. We are going to talk about our warpath Firefight, and we've got a new book to talk about. So, let's see how we get on with that. We're going to talk about our warpath Deadzone. We're then going to move on to Pannithor, talk about Kings of War, and I'm sure we're going to mention Clash of Kings, which happened last weekend. Our Pannilore for today, and I'm not sure if he's read it or not, is Mark is going to explain to us the lore of Overdrive, the game. We're going to go to listener questions, and we've got a record number of listener questions this month. I don't even know if we can get to all of them, to be quite honest, but we'll certainly do our best. Okay, fantastic. And then, so what do we want to say? So,
this is Ronnie Renton, and you are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast.
I know about this.
2 bits before we get started. So, if you're in the market for some lovely STLs, go over to Corvus Terrain and put in the code MUPodcast15 at the checkout to get a massive 15% off. And those files are great. I use them for Walking Dead. I use them for Mantic Sci-Fi. There's some really, really good stuff there. And very excitingly, after Clash of Kings, we've been talking to Baron of Dice, who are very much the Rolls Royce of dice. They really, really do make amazing premium dice. Highly recommended. And if you go over to their web store and put in the code Mantic Universe, big M, big U, if that matters, you get a massive 5% off. And Clem, I've just been talking about Baron of Dice, but you've joined us at a great time. Ronnie's on, and we're just about to get started. I've done the introduction, which I normally get wrong. I think it's gone okay this month.
This is Rob Fnuff from the Counter Charge Podcast, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe Podcast, the only podcast that has the balls to cover all their games.
Yeah, I mean, did you lose the touch because we haven't recorded in so long, right? Or you still got it?
Still got it since yesterday. Super.
Aye.
Fantastic. So, topic of the month. So, Ronnie, I was thinking about this. So, Twilight Kin looks absolutely fantastic. You've got an awful lot of hard plastics in a new release, which, is exciting. It's good for Mantic and good for us as gamers.
Yeah.
The models, we were lucky enough to be at Mantic before Clash of Kings. We've seen them. They're absolutely stunning. The units are very varied.
This is the only podcast with the balls to do all the games.
Yep.
And I was thinking to myself, it's sort of a bit of a literal plastic metaphor for, these Twilight Kin, they're on these ships, they're navigating the void, they're sort of navigating between dreams and reality. Yep. And it's sort of a little bit like Mantic Games at the moment. You're on the path, I think. You're traveling. You're probably not where you want to be quite yet, but I think you're well on the way there. And maybe, Ronnie, you can just take that tortured metaphor and just run with it for me.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, it is interesting. What's bizarre is running into the pandemic, I'd say we were in pretty good shape. We were recruiting, we had good momentum, and it's the tiny little conversations that we don't know about. The games that go on in a store in Reno on a Tuesday night, they're Mantic night, and they're playing games, and that's introducing people, and those people start playing and things grow. And then the pandemic did change a few things. The first was that obviously gaming stopped everywhere for fully 3 months, but largely a year of face-to-face gaming in social spaces. People carried on playing. There's lots of universal battles. And the Kings of War players, I think, finished those armies off they're meant to do. They bought and read and played with their Kings of War buddies, but they maybe did it in their garage or in their basement or in their dining hall room. And what that did was it kind of stopped the recruitment. The second thing is we had to switch into resin because we couldn't get the plastics made. There was just the whole world stopped for a while, and so coming out of those, I think the first thing we fixed was the plastics, and it takes at least 6 months, probably a year, from deciding and committing to actually seeing the benefits of that release. And then the recruitment it feels like it's just started to come back. So it does feel like the pandemic was a diversion or a slowdown of what we were doing, and then getting back on that bike and getting cycling again and getting back on your journey between dreams and reality and getting the momentum back up. It just has taken some time. I don't think it ever stopped, but it's one of those things that getting up to that fast speed, that really quick, global. So I think a lot of good things happened, but at the same time, some things that stopped happening need to happen again, have started to happen again. So it does feel like that real momentum that I've been thinking about Kings of War for a while. I'm going to jump on board. The Firefight, universe is just really getting some traction now, and people are just knowing that it's there to stay. So yes, I think stretching your tortured metaphor to breaking point, we do have that momentum. It does feel good. It does feel like we're back up to speed, back in the peloton, and the Voyage skiff is now breaking through into new dreams and nightmares.
Perfect. And just out of interest, Ronnie, people were, so obviously COVID, it was pretty dark days. People were suddenly very time rich. Yep. When they may not necessarily have been. Did it impact sales? Because I can imagine a lot of people went, right, that's it, I'm doing an army now.
Yeah. So interestingly, it didn't, I think some computer games, the day after the lockdown started, their sales went up, 200 million% or something. I think what happened was those that were in your ecosphere were getting to the end of the month and thought, wow, I've not been to a tournament. I've not spent money with airlines or hotels. I've not spent money on gas. I've got some hobby money. And so we didn't see it overnight as suddenly it just got busier, but we were just busy. We were just, all of our issues became operations. Sales were easy, which is never the truth. Normally, it's people have many other things to spend money on and no time to do it, and time rich, time poor, money poor, all the things. And all of a sudden, so it wasn't like, oh my God, we're doing double what we normally do. We kind of made our sales numbers, but in a wholly different way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I do remember you put out the containment protocol. I think I found that very funny. You put out, I think it was random sci-fi boxes or something like that, which I thought was a really smart idea to just get people, putting orders in. Yeah.
And we just had to, and we had kind of a couple of months because there was a bit where everyone else closed and we were still open. I stayed up all night reading the legislation. And I said, no, I don't think they want companies to close. I think they want you to, operate sensibly. But if you, so for a while, a lot of people looked to us, and that's when The Walking Dead. I mean, hilariously, we sold out of The Walking Dead stock. So in the end of the world pandemic, we obviously black humour kicked in, and The Walking Dead did very well. And I think it was a game you could play with your family. People knew of it. And so we studied. The Kickstarters did very well. A kind of add-on for Hellboy Kickstarter did double what we thought it would do. So we did benefit, but not in a way where you suddenly put your feet up and go, okay, there we are, we're now 5 times the size, and then you come crashing down afterwards. We just stayed steady. We did creep up. We had a little dip at the beginning of this year as the world really started moving. And all those people that had painted that army and built that army, and, we saw that at Clash this weekend. Last weekend, 75-80% of the armies there were Mantic armies, and that's because people had some time. They could finish that project off. They could actually get it done. And that's why we're very sympathetic to the fact that we know lots of people have Mantic figures, but getting it from a figure to a completely painted army that you're tournament comfortable with is a tough old journey.
Yeah, and it's. I think I said to you at Clash, Ronnie. It's not a conversation you can have, but it's something I can say as a player and as a fan of Mantic. Is, I think sometimes people have, when we're Pathfinders or we're people who are pushing the game as fans, it used to be the case that people would start with the sentence, "This game is models agnostic," and I'm certain we need to move away from that idea. And I think there is a little bit of, I'm not sure. I mean, if you honestly look at the Kings of War range, I'm sure you'll find something that you love with Mantic models. You've got great models now. There's a huge range. A lot of the armies have full ranges or nearest Amit full ranges, and I think you're well on the way of, as we were talking about at the top of the show, of the movement that Mantic, the journey that you're on as a company, I think is really, really interesting, and I think you're doing great things.
Thank you. That's very kind. And it's one of those things. I never. Well, two things, Jake. But I never have used the words we're agnostic. We're miniatures agnostic. It was always my intention that I know how hard it is to get an army together that you're comfortable playing and you feel comfortable with. So it was always my view and my, maybe not explicit view, but my implicit view of the world was you'd start with what you've got. Come on over, come and play. We're happy to have you. If you've got a Skaven army, you've got a Dwarf, come and play. And as you start playing and as you start falling in love, and when you start your next army, then that'll probably be a Mantic one. And that's, but at the same time, it's your hobby, it's your free time. If you want to play, I would, and my hierarchy is, I would rather you play my game than not play my game. I would rather you play my game with my miniatures than play my game with someone else's miniatures. So in the hierarchy, my dream state is play my game with Mantic. My second one is, well, I'd rather you play it. I'd rather the audience be big, and 3D printing didn't exist when we kind of came up with this, come on over with your troops, come and join us and come and see what a good game it is. That's now very much a thing, the 3D printing. So it became, I think, words were put into our mouth that we never came out and explicitly said, no, you can't, because the chance of being misinterpreted is so high that you need to take it in context, which is, there's a hierarchy there. And first and foremost, if you're loving Kings of War, great, come join us. I hope my miniatures are good enough to excite you. And if that doesn't work, then I'll bribe you with rum or Ronnie the Bard's miniatures. So, we'll have other ways of trying to tempt you across to encourage that behaviour. But ultimately, it's your hobby time, it's your money, it's how you want to play. So, yes, I want to tease you and tempt you, and I want you to use our minis. Of course I do, because, I also think if it's a Goblin Spearman unit, it's a Mantic Goblin Spearman unit, your opponent knows it's a Mantic Goblin Spearman unit. It's it's a unit of Naiads. So I think it helps. I think there is a certain degree that, particularly at the top levels, when you are playing top table games at 2 hours under the clock, a good player, it's rude to be asking them, what's that? What unit is that again? Ogre shooters are ogre shooters. They're ogres with guns. And if they're the Mantic models, whatever, you know exactly what they are. Our Ravens on with dwarves throwing hand grenades, you know what they are. And so there's a little bit there that at the very top level, at tournament level, I think there's a little bit of gamesmanship if people don't take that army. Because, but yeah, so I think we're on a journey. The better we make our miniatures, the easier it is for people to sign up and do it, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. How much also comes into this? So, for example, if you were to make a lovely box of Mantic, Basilian Spearmen, let's say, there are an awful lot of Spearmen on the market, right? Whereas if you go and you really mantify an army like the Halflings, let's say, you're making very unique models. It feels like, because one of the issues or challenges I think with Kings of War historically is I've found is you've got two model ranges or possibly multiple model ranges in one battle where people haven't bought Mantic on a generic fantasy table. And to me, it kind of ruins my immersion a little bit. Whereas if I see halflings against Riftforge orcs, against Night Stalkers, you can see the design sensibilities there across the different armies. You can see this all fits together, this belongs together, and it grounds me in the game, if that makes sense.
Totally. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's the better we get at doing what we're doing. And we needed to start with an audience. So you started with dwarves and elves. And Kings of Men was always meant to be the gateway army. Because I never intended to do, anything like Empire of Bretonnians in that basically French medieval knights and, kind of German Landsknecht inspired space. So if you've got one of those armies, come on over, come and play the game. And then when you start discovering what we've got, jump into our dwarf army, jump into our whatever army. And interestingly, I think Kings of Men is army list built the most that doesn't have a Mantic army to go with it these days. But when we did our first human army, which was the Basileans, or Basilians, you say tomato, I say tomato, and then later the Northern Alliance, which was humans at its core with owls and whatever around it. I very much wanted to take the approach that when we're doing something that has humans, there's a very large fantasy element to it. So the Northern Alliance have giants and flying dwarves and lots of fun stuff, and elves and dwarfs. And the Basileans have angels literally flying by their side. So I always wanted to tease in a far more fancy element into the human themed army, so that they become more fantasy. And then slowly but surely the orcs are no longer just orcs. There's orcs and Riftforge orcs, dwarfs and free dwarfs.
Yeah, exactly. So it feels over time you're mantifying things. It's all feeling more unique. You're going from a position where possibly your stuff is, obviously the granddaddy of all this is Tolkien, right? And then of course there was Games Workshop doing their Warhammer game. And I think Tolkien it's so hard to move beyond that, but you're mantifying it.
And all of them do it. So I think, you go back to the early days of GW, their elves were Tolkien elves.
Exactly. I think we forget that
so
as
Games
well.
Workshop started with a kind of Tolkien world, and then slowly, but over 15 and 20 years, Games Workshopified it. And World of Warcraft was, I think basically largely a GW rip-off. But then they took it in their own direction. And I think when you start with a fantasy world, you kind of start with something somewhat characterless and bland. But if you go too far, and one of the things I saw when I started Mantic was I'd seen 10 fun, very detailed, very developed IPs that came and went because it was too much for people to take on board. And so as well, let's just do it the other way. Let's start with the game. Let's just start by playing a better game. Kings of War is categorically I'll fight any of our games against any equivalent you want to do in a blind test with 100 people, and I believe the Mantic game will come top. And Kings of War was the first of those. It was clean, it was slick, it was written by Alessio, who'd written 2 versions of 40k and 2 versions of Warhammer by this point, so he was a seasoned pro. He knew what he was doing. He'd never had chance to write the Warhammer fantasy rank and flank game he wanted to, and I gave him the opportunity to do that. And what we got, was a remarkable piece of kit. Now we're just layering on. And I think with the Twilight Kin, because we're doing it, when you do a game and you're trying to do 10 armies, all of them end a little bit bland. It's hard to get a story on them. But because we've had 9 months since we were announced and 3 months building up, and now we're right in the middle of it, we all know the Twilight Kin kind of come out of the void. We know that they're bad elves. We kind of, because we're all watching this process, we're soaking up the IP by osmosis. We're sucking it. We want it. Tell me more about it. So it's not a push anymore. It's a pull. And when it's a pull, and it's a global campaign, so everybody's looking at, we're playing a dwarf army, but hey, the Twilight Kin are coming. The Night Stalkers are here. Northern Alliance is fighting against them. Stories are starting to be built. The IP is starting to get more depth, more rich. And then now, because we're not having to open trade accounts all the time, what we're trying to do is build up our audience. We can spend more time, more effort, pouring fire on that, pouring fuel on that fire, and keep the IP building and keep it developing. And as it's a journey, I think it's a far more interesting and osmosis style way of learning the IP. So,
I completely agree with you. And what was that process, Ronnie, with you had the, Twilight Kin, they were in the third edition of the game, for example. They were, similar to, Naughty Elves from other game systems.
Yeah. Which is, and also Hellboy. Everyone has Drow, Dark Elves. It's a very standard trope.
Yeah. So what is it you're looking for to make it Mantic? Is there a particular process you follow, or is it just someone gets an inspiration and you run with it? It's because obviously the army is very unique. They're on ships, etc. It's very, very cool. The Impalers are now massive hulking beasts, in heavy armor. Yeah. So it's a very, very iconic looking army. It's very distinctive. Was there, is there a set process you go through now with new armies, or is it just, where inspiration takes the company?
Well, and the process is about 18 months out to 6 to 12 months out, roughly. And we're just getting back to this. We were in this game pandemic, and then which we did the halflings. And, the Halflings was one of those ones where I said, and the design team really just absolutely nailed it. I said, for God's sake, don't you dare make them bloody chefs. Don't be putting kettles on their head, upside down and tin pan as their weapon. This is an army. Make it an army. And what would make Halflings work? They've got to fight. They're going to come up against a great big orc. And an orc's going to look to knock your head off. So if you can't compete, then they're going to win. So you've just got to be compelling.
You also don't want to make the Riftforged Orcs look like silly pantomime villains as well. The Riftforged Orcs are nasty. Then, and so if the Halflings are going toe to toe with them, they need to be, as you say, a proper capable army. By the way, on the down low, I find the Halflings probably the most scary army in the game, with their life leech and everything like that. They're smiling, but I'm absolutely terrified of them.
Terrified of them, and I did, and because of that, I said, and my only two inspirations in this creative process was, don't you dare take them there. Now we quite like the chefs being the vanguard. The chefs are because what they do, the vanguard unit they go ahead of the army. They're the best of the veteran troopers, and get to where the base is going to be built for that night, ahead of the troops, kill a few animals, cook them up. So by the time the army arrives, the camp's built, they've done everything. These are the seasoned pros. But the actual army, I didn't want it themed around, pots and pans and on their head. And I said the second thing is they would, like riding giant dogs. So they put blocks of troops in that are just there to just slow you down and snarl you up. And then these dogs start whipping across with Halflings on their back, almost like, not Attila, the Mongol Genghis Khan.
Genghis,
firing off the back. Here you are, you don't even know what you're fighting against. They've got speed. And then the guys took it on one more with the Harvester and the Aeronauts. And they said, well, yeah, even by the American Civil War, they had hot air balloons, and they just took this kind of melting pot of random historical units and combined them in a fighting style that I think came together to create something that now is very, very unique. Why wouldn't you buy those models? They're lovely. They're well made. If you want a unit of stalwarts, a horde of them, you can download on the Vault. So you can add the arms and heads. If you want us to make them in resin, we'll do that too.
You also managed to get Broken Alliance out as well, the novel. So it feels like everything was really tied together.
Correct.
And what does it mean, Ronnie? What does this all mean for Rordia? Is Rordia an army you could see going back in and mantifying?
Yeah, well, we'll have to talk about that. I don't know why we ended up. I think it was because there wasn't any. So one of the gifts that keep on giving, and that was heavy sarcasm in case anyone missed it, was Uncharted Empires was one of the best and worst things we ever did. Best because we'd just done in 2015 the Kings of War. All the armies that we had in plastic and made were in that book. We're very proud of it. It was a very well balanced game. We spent ages working on it. Nick Williams, Dan King, Jess Swan, everyone that was loving the game at the time. I think my predicted Jeff Swan, but there was a lot of love for what we were doing. It was a well-balanced game, and then all of a sudden, our world blew up. We knew a lot of people were going to be looking, but if you had a Dark Elf army, if you had another army, one of 10 different armies that wasn't featured in our game, you couldn't play. So we knocked this book up really to allow people with our rules committee, Matt Gilbert actually, him working for us, just sat down and we just chunked out a load of armies. Again, of the idea saying, come on over, come and join us. We'd love you to come and play our game, just so that there was also some kind of creativity of some things were coming, we put things like the Trident Realm in.
Trident Realm is my one true love, and I'm very, very much looking forward to some more hard plastics, Ronnie. Sorry to interrupt you.
No. So you might want to watch by February. If I was you, I wouldn't start a Trident Realm army just right now, unless you start some naiads and some other plastics.
I've got plenty of the naiads, don't you worry.
Yeah, correct. So they're and they take a while to paint. So I've got half of them through. So it was great, but in some ways, people saw it as. My motto was, if we haven't done it in plastic, Mantic hasn't done it. Please don't start building these armies. Varangur armies. I see. When we do Varangur, we will take it in a direction, that will be good fun. But I don't know what it is yet. So I'm very nervous when I see people taking armies that that have never had any Mantic plastic because there's no anchor point, and that's what happened in Twilight Kin. And so the reorder, we just wrote, and we thought, well, actually, people might have human armies, they might want to add some halflings to it, it'd be good fun. So let's just create this league down there. And then when they broke away from the league, they became their own army. But the interesting bit in the League of Reorder, I thought, was the halflings. So there's a few things that have unintentionally come about. And either we need to acknowledge that this has happened to them and that's that, or we're going to go back and do something with them. But
I actually think they'd be more interesting now that the halflings have rebelled, yes. Because now actually they were tricked. Spoiler alert for the Broken Alliance book. So they are this, relatively small and suddenly besieged, sort of human civilization that is, a confederacy. It still has some halflings, but now I'd be really interested to see, they've got the honor guard, they've got some really cool units, but in the story, what now happens to them? Are they going to fall completely? Are they going to go in a new direction? So to me, it's more interesting now than ever, to be quite honest with you.
Well, and there's just a few of those loose ends. And what Matt and I need to sit down is and go in the next phase. And fortunately now we've got this fantastic plastics coming through and we're now just chunking along. We're back onto our rhythm that we had pre-pandemic. We've got that rhythm and that timeline back out there. One of the things he and I are sitting down is we're going to talk through. We know next year's Kings of War releases. We also know the two projects we're doing next that's going to be alongside Kings of War. And it's how do we then tie as many of these loose ends together in a very satisfactory and complete way, in a bit of a Marvel Universe kind of, in this phase, all of these things are going to happen. And so that we can answer some of these questions, because I think there's a whole load of really fun narratives that can be told in different ways. And one of the things I'm very excited about is having a little bit of time, having stepped out of the day-to-day of just keeping the operations running, how we're going to tell these stories. And the at the moment, my headspace is that everything that happens in Pannithor, Dungeon Saga, Kings of War, whatever happens with Vanguard, and other secret and exciting projects, all are part of this narrative timeline that's running. 1 year in real world is 10 years in Pannithor. Feels like a kind of a fun narrative, and we can keep the timeline moving on, and things keep happening, just like the global campaign is doing. But making it explicit and using these to tie up some loose ends.
Just to make a quick point on something you mentioned a little while ago, Ronnie, you mentioned the Varangur and obviously the Twilight kin. I think the key for me is communication. If you're going to change an army, and I think you communicated really, really well, there will always be some grumbles from people on the internet because, that's what the internet is like. But I think you communicated really, in advance, ahead of time, as best as you could. And that's honestly, I think that's all we can expect of you. And I really appreciate it. And let's be honest, if you're doing an army that Mantic doesn't make models for, guess what? Mantic might make models for it. And when they do, the army might change. So, I think we all understand where we are.
Correct. You've got to understand, if I don't make models for it, I don't even know what you're making.
And listen, we've got to be honest with ourselves. If we don't buy Mantic models, just buying the book isn't enough. If we don't buy Mantic models, Mantic won't be here, and we won't have these wonderful games and this wonderful community that we all love. So let's be a little bit honest with ourselves that if we love this stuff, we really ought to be buying Mantic models and not
it might be,
from
but
another
it might be
game.
a very different form. It won't be because we'd have to do more any other things. So it might be, but I think it would be. It's better if I could give you great miniatures that you want to buy at a really fair price, building armies. Then that's what I kind of want you to do. But similarly, you can't shout at me if you're making something I don't know about. And until we've made plastics for it, I reserve the right to make something cool.
And Ronnie, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Ronnie.
No, so I think what we were just talking about just before the miniatures bit. We were just narrative. No, oh yeah, and I think we've communicated better about Twilight kin than we did about Northern Alliance and.
Agreed. And you took it. You took it out of the app basically and said, everyone, just FYI.
Yeah, correct. And I think we did a really good job of Twilight because it was such a big change, and I wanted it to be a big change. We'd started the discussion, and I said, "This is massive. You can't let people start building armies. You can't give them this. You've got to do it." What I didn't then say is, "Oh, by the way, we're doing cool things for Northern Alliance too," because I thought people would just be ecstatic about that. How can you not be happy about, dwarfs throwing hand grenades on? What I'd forgotten is that it was coming into show season, and people were building their army to come to Clash. So Night Stalkers, that was the other one. So I had people coming up. Paul, who won it, phoned me and said, "Well, what are you doing to me? I've started building this army. I'm playing this army. I'm doing this army. I'm trying to make it competitive." I was like, yeah, crumbs. So sorry. So that's why I'm telling everyone, Trident Realms is next. It's February, it's March, sometime next. So if you're starting it, start with our plastic, start wearing others. Of course, it's Trident Realm. It's going to be more water themed, not less. Is there going to be giant frogs spitting mortar shells half across the battlefield? Of course there is. So yes, but we've got to just bring people on the journey with us, and I think we've done that. And I think Abyssals didn't make it either because good, bad. So again, now I feel like we're not changing the theme of the Abyssal army. It's very strongly themed, same as Northern Alliance. What we're adding to all these armies in these two is whistles and bells. Is the things that really take it from an interesting Mantic army to a very cool ace Mantic army.
Forces of the Abyss, I'd say you've already got a really nice hard plastic range.
Yeah.
For that, I think it's sort of classic demon and hell archetypes, but it's really well done.
Yeah.
So be really interested to see what presumably you're adding to that. Clem, sorry, buddy, go for it.
No, the two Forces of the Abyss kits are pretty nice, but I want more of them. Looking forward to them. That's my main army. So,
okay, well, you're going to be very happy in the summer because we're going to get more. And each one of these, now we've got the core, we start to get to do the fun stuff. And this is how it goes from a good army to a great army. The Northern Alliance, the way that's fighting now. And I'll put my hands up, but that came out for Vanguard, and I was somewhat sceptical of both of them. Matt led the way on these. And I thought at the time Northern Alliance was a little bit, wildlings from the north kind of, but no, he had a very strong vision of what they were and why they were out and what their raison d'etre was. And they're a hippie commune, obviously a fighting hippie commune, where if you don't get on with dwarf society or you don't get on with elf society, this is where you go and live, and it's more of a meritocracy. But now slowly but surely this is getting real momentum, and then the dwarf clansmen that they're all woolened up, but even more so the ones riding around on ravens. How fantastic. And that's now where the second time we come to an army, I think we take it from good to great. I think as we come back to Abyss, which had a load of design input because it was Basileans versus Abyss. That was the lead armies for 3rd edition. We're going to come back to these and really put them at the centre of the story. Our Forces of Abyss are one of the typical archetypical baddies, along with Twilight Kin, Night Stalkers.
Yeah.
So I think it's really great now that we're getting that momentum to come back, visit armies again, and put something that makes them, wild, and really fun to play.
Ronnie, I'm really interested to see what you do with Basileans, because I think you have a nice model range for them.
Yeah.
They don't seem to be one of the most popular played armies.
Yep.
And I think I feel like that could be an opportunity.
I do too, and there won't be next year. I know the 3rd army next year, and even I'm not allowed to say at the moment, but there's not them. But we will. I think they would be a classic 2025 army. What year is it next year? 24. A classic in the February-May slot. They would fit well into one of those because I think they're good, but I don't think they're great yet. I don't think they've really got their character.
Agreed.
There is potential for it. And so, Ronnie, just a quick question. So Kings of War is almost 10 years old now. What's the big secret for the 10-year anniversary?
Well, it depends when you go from the first, which edition was the first edition. I think it's a little bit more than 10 years old, isn't it? If you go from the 3 printed editions that we were giving away. Let me dig out my copy just here. I've got them all. I'll check the date.
I'm not too stuck on dates, but I'm waiting for a big 10-year anniversary event or big something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's 15 years of Mantic next year, isn't it? 2009, the September, the Elves came out. So here we are. Unless it was published by 2012, the copyright of the first book. So 11 years already. I missed it. Bloody hell, there we are.
Let's do the 15 years then.
There we go. Let's go for 15. Look at all these pictures. Goodness gracious, this is we should have our cameras on. I'm just going down the. I'm going going to vanish down the nostalgia train if I don't stop looking at that. But there we are.
Ronnie, we were picking up on a few things you mentioned at Clash. I think we were speculating wildly what the next army for next year might be, and I think we're thinking maybe Sylvan Kin, maybe Herd. I think Mark said Herd, so I instinctively said, well, maybe the Sylvan Kin, because I just want to be argumentative. Yeah. So I think you mentioned it. There aren't hard plastics for this particular army, so I'd be very interested if we're, in the right ballpark.
Can you hear the tumbleweed?
Yeah.
He's not going to tell you, Chris.
I could always hear the tumbleweed.
No, that was what I because we haven't yet got we know roughly what we want to do, and it's part of a very big story. I was talking about this whole story arc. The 1 year is 10 years. This is a massive story to go alongside, like this year's was, where the Twilight Kin, the void opens up and the map's changing, and this whole idea of, I think we're going to learn to fall in love with Pannithor through the games we play and the stories we tell and the way armies get released, and each way it just builds up and adds a new layer and another texture to the whole thing, and we want to tell this story right. I think the Trident Realms, is he part of the story? Yes, that and the Abyss is both part of the story, but this is the coup de grace, and this is the point that the story becomes obvious, and I want to tell it in the right way. So I can't give you the end of the book.
No worries,
Ron.
We enjoy speculating.
Yeah, well, it's good fun, and it will be. It's going to be another great year of Kings of War. No two ways about it. Clash,
absolutely.
Clash will be good.
Twilight Kin release, I think it's end of October, I'm going to say, when we could expect deliveries on that one.
Yeah, early November, I think. No, it's October. No, you're right. No, it's Train Crate in the following month. So no, yes, shipping mid-October.
And can you tell us, Ronnie, when would we expect the list to be in the companion app? I know a few people who are hanging on to see what the rules are before they pull the trigger on that. One thing
that we so if you buy the army, the list is going to have a printed army list in your army. But I fully understand that people want to read, plan, and decide whether they want to play it before they commit. And I suspect we've got about another week of background, and sometime along that we will be putting the stats out. I don't know whether they've chosen to do it unit at a time, So you can just, it's again that if we just put it up, people just read it, then whereas if we go, look, here is the void skiffs, and this is what they do in your army. And Kyle's very good at that because he's a great player. He's been part of the whole design process, instrumental in the design process. I'd probably say he's design lead on Twilight Kin, certainly visuals. So he's got a great understanding of how they play and how they look.
He's also a very charismatic man.
He is a very nice man. He is very nice. So he's done, he's done a very big, heavy lifting job. So I just want to let each, because it's all so new. If we just dump the army list on it, you lack all the character. You just go, well, they're too tough, they're too weak. They don't, what's the point of it? Whereas if you're seeing void skiffs and going, oh, they're not just chariots. They're central to how they serve through the void, and I've got pictures of them flying this way and that way, and impalers and how they've come about, how they've mutated, but they're strong enough that they won't get crushed. They don't become into void slaves or whatever the other ones are, and void touched. So and how that they're slavers and they just take night stalkers as their slaves, and so there's this whole kind of nasty edge to them. And so we just have to give ourselves 2 or 3 weeks to allow the pictures, the photography, the backstory to emerge, and alongside it, some of the units, of course.
So for me, Ronnie, I'd much rather hear all this than, they hit on 4s. No, they hit on 3s. I'm much more interested to get excited about the theme and the feel of the army rather than the numbers. And
you can't fight against it at the moment anyway. So even if you just want the hits on 4 looks on stats, don't worry, it's coming. Of course, it's going to come. But you can't fight against it, so I'm not denying you anything that you don't have. And we'll put it out, but I want to put it out alongside the context. Whereas if it just goes up too early, it becomes a rule discussion, and then people say, well, there's no lore in Pannithor. There's no background. I don't love it. You say, well, okay, that's because we put the rule book up, the army stats up first, and we allowed everyone to just dive in there. And so give us a week or two, you'll have all the stats, all of it. It'll all be out. As the miniatures start to hit, get down to your local gaming store, jump online and buy them if you like them. But
one thing we love, Ronnie, is you've started really leaning into what I think is one of Kings of War's biggest strengths, and that's the multi-basing side of it.
Yeah, I was slow to that. I'd gotten Abyssal Dwarf army painted by someone for me, and I was still trapped in the. They were all 20mm based up. And it must have been 6 or 7 years ago. But even then, I was still late to it. I glued them all to bases because I realised I was never, ever going to play any other game. If it was a rank and flank game, I was playing Kings of War. And this sounds like some kind of, road to Damascus moment. But it wasn't. I just realised I was never going to play it. And there it was. And then I started building my dwarf army. And I knew if I painted the figures individually, I'd never do it. And at this point, I was enjoying the modelling aspects even more than the painting. And I don't get a lot of time. It's quite hard when you come home and you've been doing toy soldiers all day to do them at night as well. But I had a real yearning for it. It was a nice time, and Kings of War was doing well. And I started my dwarf army. And actually, I glued the figures together. I glued them onto a base with the terrain on the base, and I got more adventurous as time went by. I sprayed it black, and I painted what I could see. And before I knew it, units were starting to happen. And what was interesting was I wasn't painting figures. I was painting units. I was painting an army. And I don't know if you saw it when you were over. It was in my office. The army has a great thematic. It's blue and green, which has always been my dwarf colours. But as an army, I've never been more proud. And it looks a hell of a lot better than the Abyssal one that I had done, because that looks like lots of miniatures glued to a gaming table, glued to movement trays. This is an army. And for me, that's kind of a big part is losing yourself in the visuals before the battle starts, when the drums go and the cannons start firing. It's that, and it did that, and I was just nervous that there'd be some kind of pushback, and I was wrong. I should have leaned into it.
I don't know if you agree with this, Ronnie. I think for me the hardest thing getting new players into Kings of War, the game is amazing. Almost never, people never argue that point. It's people are intimidated, I think, painting that many models. So the multi-basing, the fact that you now have ambush, because I think Vanguard is a good game. Bear in mind, I've got the rules, bought the rules, never played it. But Vanguard seems like a really good game, but it was never going to be that game to get people into Kings of War, right? Because the design sensibilities of those two things are very different. Correct. You're not going to paint up, 10 Vanguard models and then you don't have a start to play Kings of War proper. So it's a different beast. So
yeah, it's almost a perfect segue to Firefight at that point, isn't it? Because Deadzone does lead you straight into Firefight.
Precisely.
And it's actually, we were coming, and I just said, you know what? We made it very hard to get into Kings of War. And that was when I was starting this, you know what? We need to get back recruiting. And I looked and I said, well, do you want the army or the mega army? The 2-player set, even the 2-player set doesn't tell you what to buy next. It doesn't tell you what you need. And even then, you've got a load of troops to build and paint. So you have to have a pretty grown-up approach to it. So ambush was a big step. And I said, well, if we're going to teach you to do it, let's just not put the 20mm bases in. Let's put the unit bases in, because it makes the journey half as hard. It genuinely makes it much, much easier. And it shows the strength of the game. And the fact is, the things that look fantastic are your dioramas around your models.
Exactly, which you simply can't do with almost any other game.
No.
So it's really, you're leaning into the strengths of the system, of the of the game. It's absolutely fantastic. It really feels like you're playing to your strengths, and your strengths are, this is an amazing game, amazing dioramas. People can be so creative. I think it's absolutely fantastic, Ronnie. I think everything Mantic have been doing recently has just been, fantastic, really, and super. And maybe we could. And one random question I had, Ronnie, I'd love to talk about the Shadowed Horizons campaign with you shortly. One thing I just wanted to ask, actually, while I think about it, Mantic Vault. Yep. How do you decide what goes on there, and does that, is that going sort of hand in glove with your hard plastics, etc.? Is that coordinated with your other business activities?
Yes. So the answer is categorically yes at this stage. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and this 3D printing thing seems to be here to stay. I'm very conscious that I don't 3D print. I did 3D printing my birds because I couldn't wait for the plastics to come in. And I found it quite a frustrating experience. But I know there's a lot of people who will never buy plastic again. I'm also aware that currently an awful lot of people don't 3D print. I think Mark was telling me you had a 3D printer, Mark, that your wife bought you that you think looks very nice, but that's not your hobby.
It's still in the box, Ronnie.
Exactly that. And so I think it's here. It's part of what we do, but it isn't yet what we do. And we have a business so I'm very conscious that I don't make things in the vaults that you can't buy in resin. But fortunately, I have a rather large model range built up over 15 years. So, but I'm also sympathetic to the stalwarts, which I use, for example, which are the halflings. And for us to make you 10 heads, 10 halfling heads, 10 left hands and 10 right hands holding the two-handed weapons, because we couldn't get them on the plastic sprue, honestly is a pain. And we don't charge very much more money for it, even though that's 30 pieces of resin. And 30 pieces of resin at that size is an absolute nightmare. So, but even if we don't really charge enough, but we want to have the whole army, there it is available. Someone goes down and says, I want a horde of those. So there might be $40, 35 quid. I need 4 of those, 4 units of 10. So, 30, 60, 90, 120, 140 quid. Quite a lot of money, So it's something that's difficult for us.
It's expensive for the customer, but also Mantic aren't making a huge profit on that, are they? Either it's you might even be losing money on it. In all honesty,
if we're not losing, but we're certainly not. We're not. Retiring anytime soon. If I put the plastic in there, I put one sprue in, I put it in a box, I seal it, I send it to you. Done. Whereas as soon as I do the resin, I've got to cast the resin, I've got to bring it down, I've got to check it, I've got to put it in the right. So it just seemed like there was an obvious win-win. Where if you want the convenience of the resin and us to do it for you, here it is, we've done it. And we want you to make this army collecting as easily as approachable as possible. And there's a few models in each range that are big and lumpy and difficult. We've made them, we will make them. So if you want your halfling army, you might not be able to get the plastics, but you can't get all of the add-ons at your local store. The Vault does it. So it's both, if that's your hobby, it allows you to buy a few plastic sprues, and add it up and finish it off and do it off. If you think, cost-wise or convenience-wise, that's a good way of finishing your army. You can buy a mega army. You can add all your other bits and bobs to it. You're pretty much there. But similarly, if it's not your thing, we've got you covered too. So, and we've done it with a game. I said, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it properly. And Armada absolutely fits in this camp. You know, they're expensive ships. One cannon breaks off, one oar breaks off. I've got to send you another piece of resin halfway around the world. So if you want to go to your 3D printer and print it, or you want 6 of that ship because you've got a big fleet and you want more of those ones, you know what? Let's get on with it. So I'm trying to create win-win for the consumer, win for Mantic. Also, great recruitment opportunity. You know, I had many people come up to me at Gen Con and go, hey, you know what? I've been on the fence with Armada. I've been thinking about it. I really liked it, but I just never quite jumped over. Put it up on the vaults. Boom. I was jumped on. Me and my son are playing every weekend. We love it. So suddenly there's that recruitment going on. You know, we're going to come out to my mini factory the next few weeks with a whole, here's a special promo deal. Here's a special rulebook. Come and play our games. We think you might like them. We know you are now gamers in search of a game. Why don't you come and try Mantic?
I can honestly tell you as well, Ronnie, once you start playing one Mantic game, ... And super. Mark, feel free to jump in and ask any questions.
No problem. So everything's already up for pre-order for the Twilight can, right, Ronnie? Is there anything held back? Is there a second wave, or is this it?
No, that's it on this one. We've got we just did a full big wave of everything there. Get it all out. Get the army done. They ally in and can use Night Stalkers, so it was a good way because they're some of the units they can bulk out, but like the ogres can access the goblins. So the army will be going up in a few days' time. I'll chat to the guys. I don't know exactly, but it's not going to be long. You're going to see it, and then you'll be able to buy exactly and specifically what you want. But you've got everything you're going to go at. The main characters, they're all there.
Very, very good. And the 2-player set, we can let everybody know, is Twilightkin versus Abyssal Dwarfs, right?
Oh, it looks so good.
It does. Good. I know I'm getting it.
Set. Oh, it's just to play Ambush. It's great. Yeah, fantastic. Even if you're not really, they're 2 interesting factions as well. Clem, anything to ask, buddy?
I'm still digesting everything. There was a I'm dreaming about some Forces of the Abyss. And
centerpiece models, maybe. Yeah. And
I mean, I already have a lot of them, but I'm always happy to add to it.
You do, don't you? Ronnie, one thing I would like to ask. I think I've got a Riftforged Orcs army. I love that army. The range isn't complete. I know it seems like it wasn't as it came out at a similar time to Halflings. Halflings was a mega success for you. I don't think the Riftforged Orcs quite were. I've got a lovely army for them. Some of the models, the Hellstrikers, are on the vault. I know. Yep. Any plans for anything? I think there are a couple of models missing.
I don't know. I have to check. I think we may well get to a point where we just go along and we look at all the armies and what they're missing, and is there a way that we can get these sorted for them in a instead of doing hard plastics for one army, we do some chunk of resin. But again, it comes back to that kind of resin circular argument. So is there anything planned between now and June? No, there isn't. I don't want to lead anyone on. The 2 armies that we are definitely focusing on for Kings of War is Trident Realm and then the Force of the Abyss, and they're going to get a glow up as I heard the Twilight King described the other day. So I don't want to mislead, but this comes out of this conversation that me and Matt are going to have in the next month or 2. Is we've got some other side projects that are Pannithor related, and do they allow us to visit armies in a way that allows us to complete ranges, but in and of itself is exciting, rather than just here's those missing units. You think, well, I mean to get those, but right now I'm in the middle of my Halfling army. I'm not doing my Riftforged Orc army, so there's no compelling reason to get them, if you know what I mean. And releases without context invariably do quite poorly because they're not big enough to get people to start the army, and they're not compelling enough people to revisit the army.
Right, I'm with you. Yeah,
So
fantastic.
what I found is that it's by far better to say, right, Trident Realm, you've all dilly-dallied, you've all got an army or an ambush set under the bed or something. Here they come, here's the story, here's what we're doing, here's the cool, exciting bits, here's some great rules for them, have at it. And people go, oh, I've been meaning to do that. You know what, this is my tipping point. That's going to be my next year's tournament army. So they start building it 2024 to take to the tournaments in 2025, and it's the you need the backstory, you need the new models, you need a whole big push.
Everything tied together and resources from Mantic, serious resources.
And it's what you were saying at the beginning at the top of the podcast was, it feels like there's momentum here and things are all tied together. They're all tied together because we're focusing on something and doing it really, really well. Whereas if you start spreading
100%.
ourselves
No, I'm 100% with you. It's the right thing to do, and it feels like you don't just know what you're doing next year. I think you've probably got a good idea of what's happening the year after as well. That I think certainly get that impression. So Ronnie, let's talk about the global campaign. So it all kicked off the Friday before Clash of Kings at Mantic HQ, and it was an enormous amount of beautifully painted ravens against the Night Stalkers.
Yep.
The Night Stalkers seem to get a big win for evil.
Yep.
So what happens now? How can people participate? What should we do to get excited?
So firstly, if you're registered on the Mantic Companion, and I think many tens of thousands of you are now, you're already registered. You can just go in and it'll ask you to let's bring it up, but it just ask you to which do you want to be aligned to, good or evil. And what's quite nice about this is it doesn't matter which army you're going to play. It's just which faction you want to fight for. Now, obviously, the more good your army is, you probably want to pick good. And if you're playing Night Stalkers, you probably want to pick bad.
Although, to be fair, Ronnie, our friend Manuel has a massive Basilian army, which is corrupted Basilians. So he plays Basilian rules, but they're evil.
Yeah, okay. It
does happen.
He'll click it the other way and pick the evil side. So you jump in and you've got you pick which side, and what's essentially happening is the Night Stalkers, at the behest of some evil and dark, sinister race that's assumed to appear in Pannithor, have got them opening void cages dotted around the northern wastes, specifically around Chill, because it appears that there's something that people want, that some baddies want in Chill, some massive artifact there that might be very important and relevant, and so the game that we kicked off with, which was the Ravens with the vanguard of the Northern Alliance army, simply there to slow down and start damaging and defeating and attacking the Night Stalker horde that was coming on to Chill. So it's a bit like Thermopylae, the 300 Spartans fighting to the death, but to slow down this Night Stalker horde. And you saw we had that great big beautiful gaming table all set up, and they valiantly charged in the charge of the Light Brigade. And what's going to happen over the next few weeks is each week there is a number of win-loss scenarios, and depending on the games and the fights and how they play out, the stronger the good win, the less traction the void cages get, the less damaging there is, and there's votes to do it, and it's quite interactive. It's good fun. It's our first one that we're doing this way. I think it'll be a great narrative. I just recommend everybody just go sign up, even if you just get the emails, because the emails are just great stories. They're in world, and you're going to only hear the story from one perspective. If you're in the goodies, it's an assault on everything that's good. The messages have gone out, the ravens have been sent out to the dwarves and the elves and say, please come and help us. The Northern Alliance is under attack, and if we lose this, the world of Pannithor is going to be a much darker place. And the evil are, marching on and having fun and basically laying waste to everything they can find.
Oh, that's so exciting, Ronnie. I love the idea. You get it from your perspective. I think that's a fantastic idea. I'm still pretty sure that is it Tassadar, the leader of the Northern Alliance. I still feel like it's a massive pyramid scheme he set up. You know, I've got this mysterious, incredibly magical artifact, but you can't see it. So build me this magical city in the wastes.
Oh, yes, maybe he is. Who knows? Maybe he's but he's not. So
Ronnie, is Steve Hildrew right? If we read Rise of the Celestians, we might figure out what is in Shield that all the big deal is all about.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I'm pretty sure I've got it on my Kindle. I need to get around to it.
It's as simple as that. Matt has the next 5 years all in his head, but he's not told anyone what it is. And then when we sit down to him, we say, "Tell us about it, Matt." And he starts telling us this fantastic story, and we go, "Oh my God, that's amazing." You know, then there's the Dwarf Civil War kicking off, and why's that happened, and what's under chill, and what's this, and he's got all these books lined up that he's telling them about, and then I have to say, right now, firstly, how can we play in this playground? Because I want people to affect what happens and when it happens and how it happens. So then he's a bit curmudgeonly with me. And secondly, I said, how do we tell people about it? How other than just the books can we tell people what's going on? And I think that's why campaigns and army releases are a great way of doing it, because we have the attention. We have everyone looking at Twilight Kin now. Might be for the models, might be for the rules, might be, but you're looking and you're going to find out a bit more about who they are and what they do. And in doing so, you'll find out about the Twilight Kin and the Northern Alliance, the good guys as well as the bad guys. So I'm just picking my faction now. I've been meaning to do it all day, actually.
Very exciting.
So yes, if you just go to it, Kings of War, if you haven't registered, register. If you have registered, if you've got a Vault or you've got a companion registration, obviously you don't need a subscription, you just need to have registered, so you can just do an army deal. And then you can either click the great big butcher that's standing there, or you can click the heroic and hardy Northern Alliance hero Thane, and then you go fight for good or fight for evil, and it looks brilliant. I'd recommend everybody, while you're listening to this podcast, run over to your computer in kingsofwarthegame.com, Shadowed Horizons, but just go via Mantic Games, click the companion, click on it, and it actually just says pick one of them, and one of them highlights and darks the other one out. So I've just gone for good. So alignment good, the campaign hub, your alignment's been chosen. Act 2, weather special rule for the week. It's bloody snowing. At the start of each turn, roll a 6. New scenario for the week is there. Then you've got a decision whether you rest your troops or press on with your forced march. And what you do will affect the likelihood of the fight. So there's a whole anchor through it. Story so far is there. Narrative of the campaign. Real-time stats about the campaign. Declare a battle. It's where you can list your armies and games and play a game. All looks absolutely beautiful. Oh, wow, it's come back. Okay, Act 2 is 50-50. We'll probably just kick that off. But
it almost reminds me of a kind of choose your own adventure book, which I used to read when I was a kid, and just absolutely loved them. That sounds amazing.
And we're doing it, but what happens will affect the map. Now, the Twilight Kin are coming. That's not an option that can be negated out. They've planned long and hard. They're coming. But how hard they come and where they come and some of the other distinct outcomes are in the hands of the players.
It's really exciting. Yeah, I'll be going to I've booked 2 tables at the game shop this Friday, so I'll be bringing 4 ambush armies and get some games in, submit them on the app. Fantastic.
Excellent. Yeah, the goodies are doing quite well at the moment. You need a few. Act 1, the goodies 1. Force of Good 65, Force of Evil 35. So, we always get hung up because we've got more evil armies than good. Neutral can go either way, but at the moment, Act 1, and you can catch up to speed. So even if you've not had it, just listen in. Lots of great content on the site. It's beautiful.
Fantastic. Hey, Ronnie, how do you feel about the whole good, neutral, evil alignments? Do you feel like it does a job? I'm a bit critical about it, to be honest.
Okay, tell me why.
So I think. So if you look at some of the factions, like, for example, Basileans are down as good. If you read into the lore, and obviously it's more interesting this way, they're not really good. So it feels like a bit of, a bit of a sales pitch from the good guys. Yeah. And I think it doesn't Yeah, we just talked about it previously on the pod, but
yeah. Well, let me give you, because it's not a two-dimensional thing. It's not good versus evil. There's good, evil, and nature, and it's a triangle. And so you fit somewhere within that triangle. And so there's races, and these are some of the ones that are coming later that are, for example, necromancy doesn't have to be an evil.
Hence Jarvis is using it for good.
Yeah, because of the Ophidian. So, because essentially it's a nature, it's the earth is giving you the magic that's allowing you to raise the undead. So the Ophidians would use them as slaves to build their slaves. They would raise skeletons up to build their temples. Because it's the fact that necromancers are lunatic, megalomaniac, power hungry psychos, that when they get the power to raise the undead, they use it to, bump off the guy next door and steal his whatever he wants to steal.
I'm with you. And I think the Ophidians I think they're sort of quite consensual with their, when you pass away, would you mind being a sort of a zombie labourer? That's fine.
Come along, we'll just do that. We won't do anything thingies with you. So you've got to add that third dimension of good, evil, and nature. And then you think, well, actually, the dwarfs are kind of good. And what do you mean good? It means they when the threat comes, they kind of square up and fight against the threat. And what is the threat? The threat is some of the factions choosing to exert power and change the status quo. Now, it's easy to say, well, the Basileans aren't very good. Well, they're so good. They're so perfectly good. They're so right. Well, nature isn't important. If we have to do something to stop evil from winning like the Abyss by flooding this area, we flood it. And nature says, excuse me, do we get a vote on this? Because we don't think that's terribly good. And so by purposely polarizing it on three levels, the Basileans have come so much into good, they're so self-righteous that there is no doubt in their mind, and that arguably makes them less good. But what they're doing is fighting against the threat of evil, so they see the world simply through that paradigm. Whereas there's, the Trident realm, which is far more nature-oriented, the Green Lady, they're looking for harmony. And actually, sometimes the Abyss, well, they're creatures, they do what they want to do. And if they're in balance, it might be the Basileans that are causing a problem. So
they may be damming a river or something, and then the Green Lady or the Trident realm may go, hang on a second. Yeah, we're siding against the Basileans now, right?
And the dwarfs might be mining, and that's fine. And you're taking the resources, and that's kind of where we get. And then they go too far, and they keep pushing it, and then they go, well, you know what? We're not with you on that.
And then they get a Balrog. Yeah,
correct. Boom, there you are. Now you're in a game. So when you hear it on the three angles, good, bad, and nature, it becomes a lot more contextual, because where does the army live in the harmony and balance of it all? How do they see good and evil? And it's a bit like the lawful chaotic stuff that comes. So when you see it as a triangle, I think it becomes far more interesting. And you can be so good you're almost bad. You can be so neutral, but you're looking and seeking for harmony and therefore good. But similarly, it could be the good guys are doing bad things, so therefore they're your enemy. So therefore you're not with them.
Fantastic. I always think it's important to have a little look on the map of Pannithor and go, yeah, we're fighting here. And there's a reason why we're fighting. A very simple one, but just some kind of context. We always try and create a little bit of context to our games. I think it makes a huge difference to the immersion.
I do too. And I think the more we can support that through global campaigns and largely it's that Basilean, Abyssal, Dwarf, up into the chill. That's the area that it usually kicks off in.
I'd love to see, Ronnie. I don't know, obviously I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'd love to see, let's say, a Basilean battlefield in a box where, you buy a box and you've got, some lovely Basilean terrain.
Yeah.
Northern Lights terrain.
This year, actually, we just couldn't quite pull it off. We ran out of bandwidth. But we had some certainly Kings of War Battlefield in a box, and it's something we may well revisit, because I agree with you. I think this takes another obstacle away, and now we've got all of these fun trees, which I'm sure, if you saw any pictures from Clash Table 1 and Table 2, had some stunning terrain on them, and this is all this new we call it Terrain Crate 3, but
I've got 2 boxes coming, but I went for the trees. I didn't worry about the other option. I think it was some sort of ancient ruins, but I love the look of the trees. Absolutely fantastic, stunning, and I've ordered 6 mats. But I kind of, because it's so important to me to I love this stuff, right, and I want to grow the community. So Clem and I have talked about this many times. It's almost like we're kind of our own. We've got the resources of our own little gaming club to make sure we can get. We did last month. We ran, or month before, we ran a 10-person Deadzone event in Idstein down the road from me, and it's important to us that we're able to kind of support these things. So it's an investment in our future happiness, as we keep saying.
Excellent. Exactly. No, and we've got that free rule book which we've given away and sent away. And this is just us acknowledging that we need the community to go and run a game. We need to go back into the gaming stores, particularly in the US, and just let people know we're here. We're bigger than we've ever been, and come join us. We've just had Masters and Best of the Rest in the US, 108 attendees. And then we've just beat that with the 148 at Clash of Kings. These are unprecedented numbers. Chris, Lady of the Lake, ran a great event. Lone Wolf still going strong. Adepticon's round the corner, the Spanish guy there. So, we're growing. I just want to wave the flag and do it faster and bigger and better and stronger, So your help is hugely appreciated. And I think to every listener, if you order from us, just add a free rule book to your game. It comes with some background, all the rules, 6 army lists, nice ambush size. It's based around the ambush units. Obviously, if someone has an existing army, they can just go to the companion and download, put their army in, and you can just click it through. So all the rules for all the armies are free, but having something tactile somehow feels better, particularly after a demo game. When someone's run a demo game, you can leave them. It's like a great calling card. So please recruit a friend. Just recruit one person. If you go to your local gaming store, they might have some in there. If they don't, they can order them and we'll put them on the next order. We're trying to get them out in many different ways, but we're just going to go on a big year-long recruitment drive, and it starts with our hardcore fans, such as yourselves, introducing a friend.
Ronnie, what were your? I mean, we're going to talk later about, dear listener, about Clash of Kings, but what were your main takeaways from the weekend?
Well, I thought it was remarkably and wonderfully well run. I don't like to say nice things about Steve, but I'm going to have to.
It sticks in the throat, doesn't it? Absolutely.
It's a little bit sticky, but I also what it allowed us to do, which is what I wanted to do, because we're not geared up to run tournaments. We're not very good at it, and people came along and kind of tolerated us being a bit amateurish at it. But I had a load of cool ideas that I wanted to do, but I never got to do because we were organising tables and terrain and the logistics and can I have this ticket and everything else. And Steve took all of that off our desk. And so it allowed me in the 3 months run up to source the, rum artifact, which is, the Goblin Blaster rum. And so people that turn up with Mantic armies to tournaments now get a cool thing. And tea, for those that don't drink, will be in it. Because it's the artifact that I love about it. It's the fact that it's kind of come from Pannithor. It allowed us to get Ronnie the Bard done, which is a sculpt for everyone that's got a Mantic army, just to thank you. And so we got we got the freedom to do fun things. And by the way, the Clash of Kings is the first of any event next year you'll be able to access these rewards. I don't quite know how we're going to do the rum because smuggling alcohol is dangerous, but Ronnie the Bard did is anyone that runs a tournament, give them one of these figures. And here's the stat line. It's a joke stat line, of course, but it's good fun. And it's encouraging and rewarding the people doing that bit of Mantic hobby that we want them to do. So it's the kickoff point. It's the start, not the end. And so that was what was lovely. It's like, this is each year. This will be our year starting point where we'll be rolling cool more stuff out. So that was lovely, taking that off us. Then we could do some fun stuff. I thought it was played in such wonderful and friendly atmosphere that's testament to the game, but also the community. People were there to have fun, enjoy themselves, roll dice, try and win by all means, compete. Old Aussie Walter, who travelled halfway across the world, had never played a Kings of War game. He thoroughly enjoyed himself. There was lots of others that played once or twice, thoroughly enjoyed themselves. Won a couple. Wow. How welcoming is that community that you can come along?
It's just incredible. I mean, just from the podcast, I think there are about 4 or 5 listeners who'd never played at a tournament before who came along, and we had a lovely old time. Yeah, they're just, as you say, just really, really nice people trying to win the game, but it's not the main thing. And
because the game is clean and slick. Everything in your turn, there's no ambiguity about the rules, and it's the ambiguity where the fights start. We play it this way in Germany, we play this way in France, we play this way in England. There's always house rules. Well, there's very few house rules because the rules are unambiguous. They're clean. They're clear.
Completely.
You've got your measuring. You do your stuff. So it toned down the fraction points, the friction points. So
I've got to be honest, one thing that really got on my nerves, Ronnie, was when you were doing your presentation and there were so many people talking over you. That drove me absolutely crazy.
Me too. Yeah. Oh, my God.
I hated that, honestly. I think next year we just have to say, shut up, guys,
Well, or just come to a group. I mean, it's their Saturday night. It's their fun. We're kind of mildly imposing. I was trying to make it fun and what have you. But similarly, if they want to drink beers and they're not interested, they're there for their time. So we could do it in a different way. I'm very happy. I like to chat to everybody and share a few leaks. I've usually had a few beers by that point, so it's good fun. But it's for Steve if he wants to do it in a different way. I'm very relaxed. I'm there at his bidding and wherever you want to put me and how you want to put me, because essentially the event is about the Kings of War community having a good time, and if I can enhance that, I'll be very happy to.
100%. And okay, and just appreciate we're taking up a lot of your time, Ronnie. We've just had, so on the sci-fi side, so Deadzone I think is the best tabletop game I've ever played in terms of game design. It's a dream to play. It's so good. Yeah. We love Firefight on this podcast. We've just had the Command Protocols book. Yeah. We've just had some very, you've obviously done some very interesting deals with third parties to make sure that there are new vehicles in the game, and obviously that's been important to you from everything you've said previously on other podcasts, etc. Is there Kings of War? There's a very clear direction you're going in, not just this year, next year, etc. Is it the same with the sci-fi stuff?
100%. So I love Deadzone. I agree with you in terms of the cleanliness of the rules. First edition came out on the back of a Kickstarter. Good, but not quite the clean game that I wanted it to be. Quite quickly, we got a second edition out, and that was when it was right. Yes, of course, it can always be refined and balanced and everything else, but boy, oh boy, was that a slick game system. And, no tape measures, no arguments about measuring. First game where you can't argue about measuring. Let's not forget that. Probably if you did have any arguments at Kings of War, it was when people hadn't marked their units and did a take back. Not a problem in Deadzone. So beautiful, beautiful game. And then, as you knew, if you were around at the time, the plan was Deadzone you'd start building and then you paint a few more figures than you intended to, and before you know it, you're halfway to a Firefight force. But then the game we wrote for Firefight was nothing like Deadzone. It didn't resonate with it back in 2018, and so I was never quite happy with where we'd got it because it wasn't a linear growth process. And then, of course, because I'm a nutter, I always wanted to do the Apocalypse level games, the Warpath level games at 28mm with 600 tanks.
Well, you're a gamer. You're obviously you're a professional, but you're a gamer at heart, aren't you? Let's be honest, Ronnie.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, and one of my anyway, it's always somewhere I've hankered to is large battles. I think one of the stratlines of Kings of War early on was big armies, big battles, and I still yearn to it. If you said right, you've got a weekend, what do you want to do, a tournament or a big battle? I'd always go big battle. Andy Sharp picked up that mantle of, as a rule, he was on the rules committee with Rob and a few of the others to make Firefight the logical next step after playing Deadzone a lot. And he nailed it. But in doing so, he became a games designer, not a rules committee. And the first thing that happens is when you become a game designer, you write the game that you write it the way you think people are going to play it. And what rules committees do is they're the first of the gamers that they get hold of it and they go, well, this is going to break and that's going to break and tear this apart. So that when it actually comes out, it's had its first level and maybe even its second level of breaking, and it's been fixed. So it's quite hard. So now, by the end of next year, by the middle of next year, whatever little metas we've got wrong in our Kings of War rule books, the tournament community will have found it out and will be exploiting everything out of it, and building spam lists and what have you. And then we have to put a new, Clash of Kings book out to just pull back from the little tweaks that have become major irritants. And so I thought the first time when we re-released Firefight, I thought it was a beautiful game. I think it was super slick, very good fun, very characterful, felt very Mantic-y, very intuitive, fast. But there was just a few things in it that weren't quite right. There was open to abuse and open to a little bit of play. So this, I now feel that Contained Protocols is the 2.0, like Deadzone was, is the 2.0 of Firefight, the true version of Firefight. Now we've got it, I can talk about it and be very proud of it. Whereas when I'm selling you something that I just know isn't quite right, I struggle. Just because I know I can't put plastics behind it and everything else, because the first thing people say is, this isn't quite right. Now you can't do that. So do we have releases? Yeah, the Enforcers are getting support in December. The Night Stalkers are coming into the Firefight. I think that might be revealed. Oops, I don't know if I'm supposed to have said that, but they're coming. So there's a whole ton of support. The tanks, I mean, I'm going to do a big video blog on it this week or next. But the conversion sets on the tanks are just fantastic. And all of a sudden, you can properly play mechanized sci-fi warfare. And I don't think there's any game out there at 28 mil certainly that does that. There just isn't.
Not at Mantic prices, there's not.
Okay, maybe there is some others out there, but we're not going to the air time. But yeah, so there's. And if you talk about that other big game, it's not mechanized. It's a skirmish game with occasional bits of tanks. It's a Panzer Grenadier level.
You're right. Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah. Sorry, it's been a while. It's been a long old while. I think 8th edition was the last time I played.
And sometimes they bring them up and then they nerf them straight away because they don't want you playing with vehicles. In that extent, they want one or two alongside 40, 50 figures. What we've done with Firefighters, we've now said, look, you've got 40 figures, you've got 2 tanks. Add 6 more tanks. By tanks, I mean vehicles. And here's how a battalion, a regiment of tanks. These 3. Here's the command tank. Here's off-field barrages. Here's anti-tank weapons. And again, by tanks, I mean vehicles. But here's mechanized infantry. Here's mechanized units fighting in fun, unusual ways. But because the game system is so brilliant, it just scales into this space seamlessly.
Yeah.
And the army building is better. The command points are better. So it's a super slick, very, very nice game. Now it's there. Boy, are we going to go after it. You better believe we are.
Great to hear, Ronnie. I can feel your passion when you're talking about these big games. I can feel your passion and excitement. And it's just talking to another gamer rather than talking to the owner of the company. Do you know what I mean? It's fantastic. Hey, Ronnie, we've just talked about big battles.
Yep.
Maybe we could talk a tiny bit about tiny battles.
Tiny big battles.
tiny epic battles.
Yeah, well, the response was unbelievable. Thousands of people voted. I mean, literally thousands.
Does it surprise you, Ronnie, when that happens? Does it still surprise you?
Yeah, it does. That many. Because, for every one that voted, there's 4 that's gone, yeah, absolutely. But I'm not going to, I don't. So, yeah, it did. It really did. And yes, please do it. Do plastics. We'd love to play that game. It was unequivocally the answer, 75%. And some people saying, quite a sizable chunk saying, I wouldn't mind some STLs, please. So we're going to chat down. We've got lots of the sculpting already done. We've got the game written, as you know. We've got the scenery sorted out because we need different scale scenery. So we've got to make that part of the release so that it can be done. But I think it's going to be on the release schedule. It was very much a please, sir, can you do that for us? Of course, great opportunity for us to dive into the Firefight universe in a great way, and in a way that I think is appeals to the vet gamer. It's not going to be a massive retail game. I think it's going to be a vet gamer. I think we're going to create lots of noise. There was clearly a lot of passion for it. So yeah, let's do it. People have the rules. They loved what we'd done. The D8s, the command dice, the army selection was brilliant. So let's find a way to make it happen. We've done very well with Armada, and that added a new dimension to the Pannithor world.
Very exciting. Yeah, fantastic. And Clem, I think this is your chance, buddy. Small scale Kings of War, Ronnie?
Yes, at some point. It's just going to take us some time to get it right. It was when I was talking about these other projects, I don't just want to go, here's exactly the same armies in exactly the same format, playing exactly the same kind of battles, smaller. I want to tell some more of the story with it. Let's open up some other areas of Pannithor. Let's go and investigate some of those other armies that we've not done yet. But let's give you a direction of travel. So, like we did with Armada, I think opened up the other half of the planet. The whole seafaring, and Twilight Kin first appeared in Armada. In their current guise. We did a load of design work with them in Armada, and then Dungeon Saga before they've now come out to a full launch. And so I very keen to do it. There's a lot of love for it. A lot of people have spoken to me about it. So yes, we've now got a tool maker that I feel that I can trust to make plastics of the quality we want. So let's get our heads down and let's make it something interesting, as well as Kings of War in whatever scale, epic scale.
That sounds amazing. And one day I'm looking forward to your ship-to-ship space combat game, which I'm imagining in my head right now. Oh, as I live and breathe, we're joined by our good friend Steve Hildrew. Steve,
wow!
Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
We deliberately schedule the pod when Steve is busy, when we know Steve is busy. So
we've rubbished him now, so he's now welcome to come on. We've said all the nice things we're saying about him. Now it can be horrible.
Yeah, Steve, we did. You won't believe this, but because it does sound unbelievable, we were saying nice things about you.
That seems unlikely. Apologies,
Steve. They weren't.
Yeah. But Steve,
now I know you're lying.
I worry now your life may have peaked.
Well, yeah. Surely, many years ago, I feel. I
was thinking of after last weekend.
Oh, well, no, it did. It was nice, wasn't it? But I had a relatively small part to play in what was a very big group effort, I feel. So I'm very much indebted to a lot of people. Tell you what I'm not indebted to is the cast of Mantic Universe podcast, who wandered in when we were halfway through setting up and then just sat around chatting while we kind of sweated around them, putting out tables and things. But it was an amazing group effort. What a weekend, right? It was awesome.
He's not lying, dear listener. We did do that. Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised you even made it there. You were pretty much in Mantic the whole time. I was there, going through my office and through my desks and.
And I've been having a brilliant time with tonsillitis and gout. And gout is very much one of those old man illnesses. Yeah, I made it. I had gout the whole time. So, that wasn't tremendous. But I made it. I did help with the putting stuff away, though, Steve. You'll be pleased to hear.
You did. I'm very grateful. Thank you. I once, talking about Ronnie's office, I once stole something inadvertently from Ronnie's office without realizing I did. The first time I met him, and I nicked something off his desk thinking it was mine.
Yeah, Ronnie's wallet. Yeah.
Turns out empty. So
because people are buying a Mantic model, that's why it's empty. You see.
Fantastic. So, and Ronnie, sorry, I know we've taken up an awful lot of your time, and we're extremely grateful. What can you tell us? Mantic board game division is a thing. Worms is a thing. You've had a couple of dice games recently, which. Lead me to believe, I hope that maybe The Walking Dead is coming back in some fashion. But maybe you could talk to us a little bit about the board game division and how that's helping you keep your focus on the main games, maybe.
Yeah, well, it was that. So the stuff it worked for two ways. I think one was when we were going. If you go back, DSO and Dungeon Saga, Warpath, Deadzone twice on Kickstarter, Kings of War once, I think. Walking Dead, but it was a miniatures game. Very much everything we're doing was miniature centric, and Mars Attacks. All of those were all about toy soldiers, perhaps dressed slightly differently in Mars Attacks or Walking Dead, but they were miniature games. Hellboy was still a miniatures game because it was essentially a dungeon crawler, but with a nice, it was all about a miniature. I was having to have these conversations with companies with great licenses we're working really well with, but I couldn't make a miniatures game out of it. And so I had to say, well, I'm either going to limit myself to 3 or 4 more miniature game licenses, or we can find some other way of doing it. But I also wanted to signify to all the people that have been on the journey with us so far that this may or may not appeal to you. Umbrella Academy, it's a great little board game. It's a family board game. Worms, I think, even more so. And Worms it's nearly a miniatures game. You're shooting each other with grenades and rocket launchers and throwing things on each other. And there's a little bit of wackiness with it. Slightly less dice normally than we normally use, but it's a PvP game. But we were excluding ourselves from fun things, from light conversations, and from some other creativity. But at the same time, I wanted to say, look, it's our board game division. It's not our Kings of War, Firefight, War Games division. So if it's not your thing, I understand. Don't feel obliged. Similarly, there's lots of other people who don't know Mantic from Adam. Terrain Crate 1 backers that play D&D. They've never heard of Mantic, but they've backed this Terrain Crate thing. They've now got loads of really nice, highly detailed, quality, indestructible, plastic dungeon doors and dungeon adventures and treasure that they play their D&D game with, and they'll never play. So I just wanted to kind of cordon it off and say there's going to be some fun things in here. We think you'll like them because we like them, but you might not. And don't beat us up too badly for it.
Ronnie, can we just? So I like the idea. I like what you're saying. It makes sense. One thing we've discussed previously on the pod. So when Mantic Board Game Division was announced, we were sort of speculating that this might be a way for Mantic. As you said, you're not going after your core customers who are already war gamers, right? So we were kind of thinking maybe you go after teenagers. Yeah. People who haven't played, the other game or something like that, get them in playing, hey, this is a fun game. Oh, by the way, Mantic also make these other great games, and just get people in at the beginning of the pipe, if that makes sense. Yeah,
and I certainly think to an extent, things like the dice card games is a great way. Dungeon Saga, which isn't board games, is actually, but it has drawn from our knowledge of what we learn in board games. Dungeon Saga Origins is the game that I want you to play, that I wanted to play with my kids, and I hadn't built it because I played Dungeon Saga with them, but it was too hard to set up, and it was just a bit fiddly. And Dungeon Saga Origins is to get you before you played anything else, or to get your gaming group to try it. And it doesn't necessarily lead to Kings of War, but it might lead to Deadzone. Your son or daughter might say, "That was good fun, Dad. What's next?" You say, "Well, how about we paint 8 or 9 figures each, and I've got this terrain here that looks really good, and the rules are really clear." So yes, but not explicitly, not overtly, do that and then come down. I just think it makes us more well known. It opens doors to us with other channels. So yesterday a Thai distributor has taken a license to sell worms in his country, so he's going to translate it and sell worms. Fantastic. And then when we do a future product, we can go back to him and say, "Hey, would this product be of interest?" Now, if I turn up and show them Kings of War and say, "Would this be of interest?" they go, "No, I have no idea what you're talking about. No one even does that. What is it, you lunatic?" But there might be other. But let's say we get The Walking Dead back, and they might go, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, we could do that in our country." And then suddenly they are playing with toy soldiers, and then from there they discover Deadzone, or they discover some of the other games we do. So I think all of it, it's one of those. As long as it's clear and it's fair and reasonable, and people understand the message, you might like it, you might not my Kings of War crowd, my fair Firefight crowd. It might be for you, it might not. Some things will slightly cross the bridge because the world is not quite as black and white as that. DSO, Barroom Brawl, our advent calendar is as appealing for D&D players as it is for, the Kings of War crowd. But because every good adventure starts in a bar, in a tavern. So we're just trying to make ourselves a little bit bigger and using that to allow us to then offer more products to more people more often, open doors and so on and so forth. And we've got some very cool things coming next year that actually are in the hobby division, but the Worms doors that it's opened will make it more successful.
Fantastic. And obviously the crowdfunding, the Kickstarters, etc., still has a place within the Mantic business model.
But there's why we're not known for Worms. Worms is not currently like a big thing. So you need to talk to as bigger audience as you possibly can in a way that they can share the story. You can tell the story. I think it was miraculous that we were doing that with Twilight Kin. That was because Worms came a little bit later and so on and so forth. But, we've managed to communicate 2 pretty big messages over the last 4 weeks. And the team have done a brilliant job doing it while doing a global campaign and Clash of Kings with Steve. So, pretty amazing. And that's because, we've got a platform there that allows us to talk to a global audience and talk to them all in a really clear, well laid out, formulaic way outside of getting our message just past our own, newsletter backers. So it's very, very valuable for us. It allows us to go and have a print run. We've now got the translations being done, and therefore that'll be hitting shelves in the summer next year. And, it'll be a pretty big game. And hopefully the little flyer that we put in will attract lots and lots more Kings of War and Firefight players.
Fantastic. I definitely think there's something to that, even if it's quite, a different gaming experience. Is Mantic being known for quality and good value, and you do build these kind of feelings for companies. Sorry, Steve, go for it, buddy.
That's all right. I was just wondering, Ronnie, because listening to you talk, then I wonder, and this is, you can tell me to bugger off for asking this question.
I will bugger off, but I might answer your question as well.
Suddenly curious, how far ahead do you plan this stuff? Because we know, you've kind of hinted at the year ahead for Kings of War. Do you have like a whole year mapped out, 3 years? Kind of what kind of horizon are we looking to here?
If I am doing my job properly, and this is when we started for the people that started the podcast on time, and we discussed this, the pandemic somewhat knocked me out of my stride, and instead of us being 6 to 18 months ahead, everything shrunk because all of a sudden we had 3 months of releases, in March, April, May of 2020 that we didn't release. And then, then June came out, but should we release the March stuff or should we release the June stuff? And so all of a sudden the kind of, and what materials can we work in? Well, you can't bring anything in from China because the boats are £20,000 each instead of £2,000. So the economics were totally screwed. So there was just a whole load of, but we're just now coming out of this. So this year was pretty much what we said it was going to be, and we pretty much got most of the things right in the right order. We did communicated most of it pretty well. You can this is the beginning of the podcast, the ones we got wrong, but I think next year it's planned. They're working on it. It feels very strong, and my head's turning towards the end of next year and 2025, and I'm trying to make sure that what we're really doing is. When we started, what we're saying, how everything was coming together and feels like it's got real momentum again, and I think that comes from having really strong focus on knockout products that maybe we go, oh my god, that's brilliant, and I can't do that in less than 12 or 18 months.
I've never seen as many people excited about a miniature launch as I have around Twilight Kin. People that I've never even heard of talking about it online. So I think you've really hit the right spot with that one.
Perfect. Good. Yeah. And I think that just takes time. It takes talent and money and love and passion and time enough to get it wrong and get it done again. They went through 3 or 4 passes of, Luigi's a proper top drawer sculptor, but to get that aesthetic and really make it work, it's easy to say, we wanted to look like cool, this, that and the other, and then some drawings, but then to turn that drawing into a model that can be made in plastic. You know, all of these processes, things can fall down.
Another thing, Ronnie, is I really think it is important because you've got one sculptor. You can see that the style of the even between armies is kind of similar. So as I was saying earlier, it looks like they belong on the same table, even though they're halflings and Riftforged orcs. They look very, very cool on the table together.
Yeah, and originally I was thinking it would be quite good fun to have every designer do a different army each and use different ones. But you're right. What you then lack is this cohesive whole.
Exactly.
And so we do occasionally use others, and with Walking Dead we use 2. But because we had such a strong aesthetic, this was the house style on that game. And I think even now we can use others a little bit with Kings of War, but because we have such a strong house style, and Matt and Dave are there policing that. And largely we don't need to because Luigi does it all, and that's what we work to. But if we said, okay, let's get a couple more models, we could use designers, but they've now got to fit the house style that we know we've got, and we want to build those gaming tables to have that feel and
it's all cohesive. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Yeah. Mark and Clem, anything to ask or anything to touch on?
Maybe quickly, just want to report the Night Stalker, the Twilight Kin models. I think the pictures on the website just don't do justice to the actual models, and so I would like to see more pictures of them on the website, or maybe if you guys could send a couple of boxes to good painters. To just paint like a different style, and put those models out there because they're so good they can't be hidden behind just one official picture on the website.
So Martin's actually sent 10 sets out to 10 great painters, and some of them you've already started seeing, and we're going to do a big swoop and put all of those up. And I think we do need more art, more paint jobs, and the sprues. I don't know why we don't put the sprues up on the website, because the sprues are fantastic to look at. So that Clem, I'll be doing that tomorrow morning, first thing.
That's great, because again, like I've seen them in Nottingham in person, and just they're mind-blowing models. Literally, the paint job is really nice, and the skulls are amazing. And when you look at the website picture, like, oh yeah, well, that's nice. It's kind of a blob of gray and purple.
Yeah, you don't get that.
You can't understand this. And so for me, when I see the pictures, like, oh, I know they are really good, and I'm gonna get some. When I talk with people in my gaming group or online, they're like, yeah, I've seen the pictures. They're like, okay, I guess. Like, no, you don't understand. They're so much better than this. So it's kind of sad. If you have an amazing product, Now,
the saying always goes that good photography should make an average miniature look good. We seem to have at the moment some talent of making great miniatures look okay, and that's pretty dumb. So I'm going to be digging into it tomorrow. We had to get it up last week, and we've been super busy with the Worms Kickstarter and just getting these up, but there are plenty more to come.
This is great to hear, Ronnie. Yeah, and I always say,
I'm just on the Butcher's page now, and you just look at those, and they're just much better. There's just much. I don't know quite how we've loaded it up in such a way that you can't get the size and the scale the way we want.
Yeah, and you are directly competing with GW, who they make good models. They may not do other things so well, but they make great models, and they take amazing pictures of those models.
Yeah. Beautiful paint jobs and beautiful pages. So no, we'll fair criticism, and we'll look into it.
Super, thanks, Ronnie. That's brilliant. Mark, what can you add?
Yeah. Well, I know, Ronnie, you got a hard stop coming up, so quick.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I gotta remind you of that.
Thank you. No, I was getting carried away, and it's my wife will just I worked all last weekend and weekend before, and America next weekend after. So occasionally she demands that we have some family time.
Sounds fair, to be fair, Ronnie, doesn't it?
Just a little follow-up.
Reasonable request.
Just a little follow-up from your talk at Clash of Kings. So you said the Trident Whelms are coming out, but I didn't hear any mention of placoderms. Is that something I could drag out of you? Might we get a frame of those? Or
I think we're going for frog, and double frog. So I'll check, but I don't think they're the plastics. And the plastics are the River Guard and the
Big frogs.
Big frogs on frogs.
Dam busters, yeah, the dam busters, I think.
And a whole load of fun. They are going to be the equivalent of the dwarfs on ravens. We're going to have mortars, howders, all manner of kind of funky stuff going on there. And I think that's where the creative juices are flowing.
I know you mentioned it, but, sometimes you hold things back. So I figured you were visiting us. You might want to add something else. And speaking of adding something else, there were 2 mystery things on your chart. Oh, go ahead.
Which Ronnie is it that holds things back? I'm not familiar with this one. Is it a different Ronnie?
I don't know.
Ronnie can be reserved here and there, so.
Yeah, sure.
Remember, Ronnie, it was me who stuck up for you.
There we go. Thank you, Mark. Exactly that. And you've nicely deflected me answering the questions I wasn't going to answer, so that's good.
But there were 2 little icons on your presentation that were there, and 2 of them people can't figure out, so that we've been talking about, and those are in the middle right and the lower right. So is there anything you can shed, any light you can shed on those, or
well, I'd have to say it, Mark. It was a long time ago. I'd had a lot to drink.
Well, I remember you saying one of them shouldn't have been up there, but
Ronnie, I've heard of playing dumb, but playing drunk. Fantastic. And I'm going to speculate wildly. I mean, plastic Matsudan would be amazing, and I think that's a cipher, but I may well be wrong. But yeah, another hard plastic kit for the
plastic Asterians. Yeah.
The marionettes that you have already are brilliant. They're so fun to paint. They're fantastic. But yeah, Asterians have a big range, and I think that would be fantastic, to be quite honest with you. Yeah.
And some of that lines up with all we talk about with Firefight and Deadzone getting a lot of love. They're now in great places because it's covering 2 gaming systems, and we just need to get behind it. And I think Containment Protocols is the launch event for us now being able to really kick it up.
Very exciting. Ronnie, is there anything we haven't asked you that you would like to be asked?
No, I've had a lovely time. I mean, I think please do go have a look at the Shadowed Horizons, even if just to follow the story. If you're not going to get a game, sign up, come on the journey with us. I think you'll get a bit more love for the Pannithor as well as for the game from those that are there. If you want to listener,
sorry, Ronnie, go for it.
No. I was going to say, and then we're running out of advent calendars. We've managed to get a few going out across to America. So those that didn't want to order directly, there's a few going there, and there's a few going into Europe. But it's very much a splash launch this year. And if you want a piece of gaming history, this is going to be, I think, probably 10 years from now. One of those things that you'll be very glad you picked up. So for your listeners, that you guys, we get out of context, but when I started playing with Citadel Miniatures, it was a very small company, a very small company, and now the people that are playing it, so while it feels like it's been going a while, I think people that are in this club are in the Kings of War and the Firefight and the Mantic journey quite early on. I think 10 years from now, just imagine where we could be. If we keep doing these summer campaigns, the story keeps going on, the games keep getting better and better, more people are playing with miniatures, more people are playing games. Wow, wouldn't it be exciting? So I think your listeners are not quite in the beginning, but they're in a part where it really starts getting fun. So, come join us.
Yeah, dear listener, please go to the Mantic website, order yourself a lovely box of models, and add the free rule book into your order, and just talk to your friend and share the fun, and you'll have an extra person to play with. It's win-win.
Exactly.
Well, we should get a Mantic Universe podcast discount code. Is what we should get. Get a little kickback in there. So I'm just saying.
Is that a thing?
Let's do that. Email me tomorrow, Steve, and we'll get one sorted out for you for your next, for either this show or the next one.
I shall immediately delegate that to Chris. Chris, email him tomorrow. There you go.
Awesome job, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, Steve. There you go. Yeah,
Five.
Fantastic.
I see. Honestly, I just put on the biggest Kings of War tournament ever run. wheedle a little disco now? Anything? What else do you want? I'll get anything.
Yeah, we need to give you a basketball, and you'd just instantly throw it through the hoop, if that's the right terminology. Yes, absolutely. Super. Ronnie, it's been a privilege having you on the show. It's been fascinating talking to you. Please keep doing what you're doing. We love Mantic. To me, the best thing you ever did was actually the rules committees, and sort of almost giving that to the players. It just means that your games are they are just the best. And yes, and we're very, very happy to be on this journey with you. Yes.
Thank you very much. No, thanks for your questions. Thank you for everybody coming along on this journey with us. And the rules committees are superstars. We don't say anything nice about Steve, but the people that organise the tournaments. We are a company that stands on the shoulders of giants. And that's what makes us unique and interesting. It's sometimes bloody hard. It's like sometimes wrestling with a pack of wolves, but the end result is invariably worth it. And that's how you end up with the US Masters and Clash of Kings with 150 people having an absolute blast. That's why we've just got the Twilight King coming out, and we're having a lot of fun. So hopefully the next 12, 18 months and beyond will just be a non-stop fun extravaganza.
Let's hope so. Fantastic. Ronnie, thank you so much for joining us. Gosh, okay, so we're nearly 2 hours into the pod, which even for us, that's that's getting up there. So we're going to have to cut a few corners, guys, on the rest of the podcast. Okay, fantastic. So
I'll say goodbye to you all, and then I'm sure I'll see you all. I'll speak to you all soon. And then will I see you in Essen, Chris?
Is that we'll talk offline.
All right then. Well, everybody, thanks for backing in on the
Cheers, Ronnie. Thanks,
Ronnie.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Clem. See you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Super. Yeah, that was
Ronnie Renton.
What a treat,
ladies and gentlemen.
What a treat that was. Fantastic. There we go, guys. Yeah. What was the was there anything? I mean, obviously, Night Stalkers in coming to Firefight. That's exciting. I think it's something that's been rumored, but to me, it just makes an awful lot of sense, right? That's fantastic news. Excellent. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Apologies once again for being so late. I don't have a good excuse other than I was playing with my children. I was being a father for one.
That is a good excuse, Steve. That is a good excuse.
We were playing, as a slight aside, we were playing a game which I'd bought drunkenly in a bar at Clash of Kings from a chap called Jez, who was the original Macwar off of Macwar's Potion of the Caterpillar. So I don't know if you guys met him or not, but he's a superb gentleman. He's designed this cool game, which is like multiplayer Connect 4. Anyway, we were playing that multiple times, and it was really good fun. So
I bought a copy of that myself and brought it home. So
we've been playing it. It's a pretty good family game.
Oh yeah, we played it. Oh geez, I think we played it Thursday night and Friday night.
It's called Kukulkan.
Yeah, Kukulkan. Yes. A very, very good game. I enjoyed the hell out of it. You get better as you go. It's like Kings of War. The army doesn't win. The general wins. So, as I proved at the Clash of Kings.
I was about to say, at Clash of Kings. Have you talked about your Clash of Kings journey yet? Your particular journey, Mark?
It has all been all Ronnie all the time for 2 hours. So I hope the listeners enjoyed the heck out of that. We have a lot of show to run unless we decide to make it a short. So
I think this is a great story, which is very fun. So you all know Mark Zielinski. Mark Zielinski is very famous. But because he came to Clash of Kings and I promised I would give him my army. So I had the people on my YouTube channel choose which of the Riftforge lists I could field. I'd come up with 3, one of which was easy to use, one of which was kind of a bit silly, and one of which was my tournament list, which is pretty good list, but it's really hard. And pretty much everyone said, give him the tournament list. So poor old Mark landed and was handed a list with 5 flyers in it and all sorts of fiddly characters and all sorts of spells. And how did that go, Mark?
I did okay. I was 2 and 3. My first game against Chris, I completely forgot to use any of my magical artifacts and had no idea how the Rift Forgers worked. So
thank goodness you did.
I figured out yourself in the foot I'm like, this is the core of the army. He's like, yeah, cool. I'm not going to use that.
Well, about what was it, game 4? I think it was game 4 when I really learned how to use the Rift Forgers. So I figured out what little power bases they were and how to use them properly. So, but game 5, I tried tweaking things out. I had a mirror match and got crushed, but then had absolutely the funnest game I've ever had in a tournament. No offense, Chris, against Heather in game 6. And oh, what a blast that was. So much fun. I my face hurt from laughing so much. So it was exactly what I needed at that point. So, yeah, no, I ended up 2 and 3. I didn't do so bad, but again, that's what shows you. It's the general, not the list. So you can give anybody an awesome list, and it's just how it gets played.
Yeah, I apparently, so on the stream, Mark, so I couldn't watch it all the way through. I must admit it's a difficult watch because they're sort of like, what is Chris doing? But I did sort of skip through it, and it was interesting because they were implying that actually your little heroes were really scary and fighty. But I didn't know that either. So they were like, oh, okay. Well, they could possibly kill Shobik. And, I had Shobik sitting there not doing anything.
You had a flag because I was watching the strike. I jumped on the street a couple of times. And there was a bit where I was like, wow, if Chris knows what he's doing, he's going to jump Shobik out that fence and surge him in. And lo and behold, you did. And then you cocked up the surge rolls. Like he was just left kind of staring into that blank space, and I was like, now's the time for Mark to jump on him with the Rift Forgers, and then Mark didn't. And I was like,
to be honest, if I knew, I would have told Mark. I didn't know either. I thought they were like little rubbish support heroes. And Steve, one thing I did want to ask. So there was a big debate about my Guardian Archers, and they were like, why is Chris not moving the Guardian Archers up yet? So they've got pot shot, so and their shooting is pretty darn good. So I don't want to move them. I just kind of surge them a bit every now and again if I feel fancy. Should I have at some point? It sounds like I should have been more aggressive with them, but maybe you can just explain that to me.
I don't remember that bit, to be honest. I think because part of the joy of Enslaved Guardian Archers is that you can surge and shoot with no penalty, right?
Yeah, so you don't trigger the pot shot. Exactly.
So there's no pot shot. In fact, none of that kind of nonsense. But I can't remember. Are they good in combat as well? Let's have a quick look.
Yeah, they are pretty good. Yeah, they're crush 1, hitting on 4s. So in combat, they're hitting on 4s. In shooting, they're hitting on 5s. So yeah, they're pretty good
in combat. So you know what I would be. I mean, I've never even opened the boxes and boxes of EOD I've got. But I would imagine that the way you would play them would be to surge them up each turn. To the point where sense. You can even literally shoot point blank range with them at someone, because they've got this 30-inch shooting, which is outrageously far.
It is outrageous. And then so you can presumably surge into combat. So the dream is you shoot and fight in the same turn.
Exactly that. But I would have kept them back myself as well, to be honest. They're not something I'm like there for the front line of combat, maybe a second or third line. But yeah, I mean, I know we're talking about you won, right? So you obviously whatever you did was right.
Yeah. I mean, I would have kept them back as well. To me, they're heavy machine guns. I mean, I use them a lot, and they've got Pierce 2. So I mean, that's better than Crush 1 in my opinion. So just roll the dice. I couldn't touch them. They were back there irritating the absolute living bejeebas out of me. I couldn't figure out a way besides a blind rush to get in there. To me, they played fine. And that's how I play them against Colin. So I love them. So that 30-inch range is, absolutely wonderful. So, but
I was terrified of your speed 10 flying Manticore things. Quite rightly so, to be fair.
Yeah, until they broke upon your units and did nothing. So, but the hammers.
Because you did the right thing. You smashed them into the left-hand flank. I remember you just had a horde, and all he had was a chariot, and that horde was going to eat that chariot. And then I could envision them sweeping across the rest of the army, but then they didn't seem to sweep across the rest of the army. Whatever. I don't know how Chris managed to foil foil that brilliant strike that you did. But
it's called my dice.
Okay. Well, I was blaming the dice now, guys. Just FYI. That's.
I am not blaming the dice. That is my usual. That is the way I usually roll. So if you saw the T-shirt I was wearing, so that's how I roll with all the 3 dice with 1s on every face. But absolutely, no, it was just typical for the way that I roll and play. So, and it pretty much hung on there for a good punch of the tournament. But I did have some good parts. But yeah, no, I went in there nerf hammered and. But it always works out better in your head than it does on the table sometimes. But I had so much fun. We played on that table 1. We were streaming. So if you want to check that out, Chris will put the link in the show notes. And Nick Williams did one heck of a job on that table. It was such a pleasure to play on that table. So
we were king for the day, weren't we, Mark? Or at least for the morning.
King for round 1. It was great. And then I took my rightful place on table 64.
Oh, boy, it was so much fun. And Clem, how was your experience at Clash of Kings?
It was a pretty cool weekend. A lot nicer than Cardiff for the venue and everything. Because Cardiff was nice already. Like it was the biggest tournament I've been to for Kings of War at that point. So that was an experience. But you have to admit that Steve did a pretty good job for this one, and so it was just a very enjoyable weekend, playing a bunch of games. I did pretty well overall. Mostly my dice. That was really embarrassing. When your dice are just super hot, like to the point where Steve had to roll one of mine at some point to check and he got a 1, so I was allowed to keep playing with them. It was a really, really cool weekend. My only regret is I wish we had some time to play some ambush, but there was so much stuff to do everywhere all the time that we didn't manage to do that. But Steve, for next year, please also have some space and time for ambush games. So why not some Deadzone as well? Might as well enjoy all of the games while we're here.
When are you proposing we play those specifically?
I was thinking Thursday.
Let's make it a 12-day weekend.
I mean, you rent the venue for 24, like it's a 24-hour thing. So all night long ambush tournament. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think the idea was that we have Saturday evening for gaming, but then we were running late, so we got up there an hour late, and then Ronnie did his talk for like an hour and a half, and then we had the quiz, and so by the time we finished all of that, it was like 9:30, and people were starting to get tired. So I think we need to kind of look at the scheduling. I think there's a couple of things that didn't go quite as well as planned. So we didn't realize how long data entry would take. We fixed it by day 2, but it meant we had that fire alarm, so running an hour late on day 1 was irritating. By the time we fixed it, next year we know exactly what we need, so it'll run much smoother and we'll be running to time a lot better. Fingers crossed, touch wood. So that's a nice place to be for alternative games. So yeah.
For a first, it was like a majestic strike. So if that's the worst you can do, looks pretty good for the future.
I mean, we did obsessively plan every day. People have been very kind and thanking me a lot, but really, is a relatively large team. There were 5 of us on the committee, and then we had so many helpers as well. And then Nick jumped in to help, and Elliot Barrett was there the whole weekend as well. So we planned as much as we physically did, and we're quite obsessive about it. We're already well into planning next year, and it's only been a week. So I think people are getting a bit sick of it now. I need to give them a little bit of a break, but we try hard. We know people are watching. People want to come because they had such a good time for next year. So we've got to up the stage. We've got to make it even better, and we've got to do everything we can. We've got to book some air conditioning, stuff like that. It needs doing. So the challenge is on, guys.
So, Steve, your passion for this is not diminished, is what you're saying.
My what, sorry?
Your passion for this is not diminished. Talking about booking air conditioning.
I mean, let's put it this way. I've had everyone telling me I've done a great job for a week. It's been brilliant. My ego's the size of the planet.
Steve, seriously, we would love to make fun of you now. Oh, how I wish the whole thing was a complete disaster. But no, seriously, you did an amazing job. It was. I've never been to an event that was just that quality, that much fun. Even, I mean, it was just. I don't know how you did it. In all honesty,
I think the atmosphere. With the players, it was genuinely the atmosphere. You know, people were so up for a good time, right? And I think if they come with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder or this, that, and the other, then it can get a bit sour. But in this one, everyone was just there just to have a great time and to really enjoy themselves. There was so much goodwill. Like it took us like 6 hours to set that tournament up. It took about an hour and a half to break it down because people were so helpful. They helped packing away. They listened to the instructions. You know, the university staff were awesome. Everything just went really nicely and everyone was really happy despite 30-degree heat. So I think, you know, the big round of applause to all the players and everything. All I did was just wang on the microphone occasionally and forget the winner's surname, which was really embarrassing at the end.
Yeah, but Steve, that's not. It was a tricky one, though, wasn't it? In fairness, but it's. I mean, you're doing yourself a little disservice there. That's not what you did, Steve, very clearly, and you had good spirits throughout, even though I was asking annoying questions when you were very busy. So, really, my hats off to you. It was amazing. I just wish you had time to come for dinner with us or something like that. But maybe next time.
I know that was the thing that really bothered me the most is that I was so busy running around. Like I didn't even get the chance to talk to people about their games that much. Like my friend Simon, he goes, you never guess what happened. I'm like, that's absolutely brilliant. Tell me later because
put a pin in that.
Right? And so I didn't get a chance to people like, I did get the chance to hang out with Mark a bit, which is awesome. But, people like yourselves that I never see, I got to say hi to you, give you a hug, and that's about it. And I feel sad for that.
Of course, one of my I will talk about what my highlight of the weekend was. One, it was either highlight of the weekend was either realizing that Steve had snuck an extra T-shirt into my pack, which honestly I was overwhelmed by that. That was so exciting. So Steve had hidden some Mantic Universe podcast T-shirts of his own design in, and honestly that was amazing. And the other highlight of the weekend was the Friday night when we were sitting outside because it was just far too hot in Mantic. It was boiling in there, so we were sitting on the step sweating, and I was chatting to Walt, who as we all know, fan of the pod, lovely chap. He come all the way from Australia, having never played a game of Kings of War, just to see what's going on. This was the biggest event, so he just wanted to be a part of it. Steve talked him into playing. So I was just chatting to Walt, and he was, I'm Walt. I'm retired. I'm from Australia. I've got my play sheep farm because I'm retired. I know where I am. I'm talking to Walt. He's Aussie. I know where I am. I know where we are with this conversation. Then Walt just casually starts talking German to someone standing behind me, fluent German. And it's like, wait a minute, is Walt really from Australia? What's happening? That was that was such a random thing. So he'd lived in Germany, and his wife's German.
Not Australia.
And yeah, exactly. And he was talking to a Swiss bloke behind me. So it was. Hang on a second. Has the heat gotten to me? Am I imagining this? Is this really happening? So yeah, and it's sort of like, okay, well maybe Walt from Australia, maybe he somehow speaks German. How does the bloke behind me speak German? It was that was a strange moment, but very yes, yeah. Mm.
That's really cool. And the international stuff I think is awesome. I was worried about language barriers, but in general, it went pretty smoothly. And, there was always someone on hand to translate and stuff like that. And I think the international nature of it was just very cool. And Walt's just what a great, because he emailed me going, I'm coming to Nottingham once in a lifetime trip just because I want to go and, I want to see the lead belt. Can I come and watch? And I was like, why not play? And he went, oh, I haven't got an army. I'm like, we'll lend you an army. And then he sent me the most filthy ogre list you've ever seen. And he was like, how about this? And I'm like, okay, all right. And yeah, he had a great time. He loved it. I told him he has to go back and play now. He's like, yeah, I know, Steve, I know. This he's going to hook up with Matt Croger. I was like, you do have your own Clash of Kings. You didn't have to come 5,000 miles to go to. Yeah.
It's not as good though, Steve, is it? They bless them. They try their best, but
Matt Croce is a legend. Ours isn't in a shed. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Fantastic. And Steve, what was your as the tournament organizer? What was your? I know you had a team behind you, but bloody hell, you did an amazing job. What was your main takeaway from the weekend, if there is such a thing?
Oh, I just I got I never got tired of people telling me it was the best wargaming event they've ever been to, and I think that was just such a compliment to us that it really put the onus on us to do it again and do it bigger and do it better. We've got plans for at least the next 2 years about where we want to go and what we want to do with it. I've had a bunch of people telling me that, 3 of us came from this shop and actually there's a bunch more interested now. And I'm like, what I'm really excited about is the fact that Clash, due to it, just by putting it in Nottingham, showed people what a draw Kings of War has got, and what's it doing is it's propagating the game. So I've had small people in my region reach out to me, not realizing that I was the Clash TO, but saying I've heard about this game and I'd like to start playing. People are buying armies on the back of it. I think it's been a real shot in the arm to show the world what Kings of War is and what it can do. It's a game that can attract 150 people in a small country to a tournament. That's amazing. And that means that people are starting to look at it a little bit more seriously now.
Truly, it is the showpiece event, which of course it's what it was always intended to be. But I suppose it's a weird situation, Mantic organising tournaments. The weirdest thing I thought they were doing was when they were being travel agents and trying to book, for example, Steve, I think they booked you to go over to the US to go as the winner, right? So, I think it's brilliant they've had the trust in you to just hand this to you, because this is such an important event and you've repaid that trust and then some. Brilliant.
I think they kind of reflected that Clash. They organised Clash of Kings because they had to, not because they wanted to. I think, if I'm being honest, it was something extra that they had to do on top of everything else. And Ronnie's talked about how busy they've been. Just this, there is no feasible way they could have fitted in this as well. The amount of time it takes to organise and to do it justice. So I think they, I put in my blog that when I offered to Ronnie, it was actually a group of us that would be willing to do it. He was like, yep, absolutely, yep. It's just like, oh, okay. So I think having players run the events is a brilliant idea. I think it's great. I think as a games company, they don't want to run events. What they want to do is make great games.
Yep.
And I said to Ronnie, what I want to do is to make him some money at the event. And he brought his shop along, and I saw people with handfuls of cash. So hopefully, it's been worth their while as well. And we're going to have a bigger shop at the next event. Everything next year, bigger, better, longer, stronger, more absorbent. It's going to be great.
So 300 in the same venue next year? Is that the plan?
I think we're topping. We have had a look at a table plan for that venue. It tops out a much more reasonable number, I think, while still remaining comfortable. You could cram people in rows of 10, but that's not a comfortable gaming experience. And I think rows of 3 is probably the max I'd want to go to, because the problem, if you want to go around to your opponent's side of the table, at this year's event, every table had clear space around it, which was lovely. I think if you've got a row of 3, it's still reasonable. And it still allows you to increase the numbers in the main hall. We've got a bit more room in the club as it is, but then you get close to 200 and the venue is full. But we've got plans for where we'd go for the year after that if we continue to increase in size. So I have no doubt we'll sell out next year pretty damn quickly. I think given the evidence from this year, we sold out pretty damn quickly, and then we had people waiting. Given the impact it's had and how cool it was, and everyone really, being raving about it, I think we're going to get a pretty fast sellout this year, which gives us the kind of the permission then to make it even bigger for the following year, as long as we don't clock it up. So
200 for next year, do you reckon? Is that the game? I mean, is that the number? Yeah, it has a nice ring to it, 200, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? I think I think 200 will be a little bit, I thought he's high 180s, I think, is where we're going to hit in terms of max capacity for that venue, while it's still being livable in, right? As long as it's not 30 degrees again. So I think high 180s for next year, and then the following year, as long as we can, we'll move to a different venue, which will be even bigger, and then the sky's the limit. So yeah. It's terrifying saying
awesome.
that, frankly.
Very exciting.
Yeah, well, the venue this year was absolutely fantastic. It was like being back. Well, you were on a college campus. It was fantastic. And it really had that vibe. People were just kind of like walking through the streets, and that one street was, like shut off from traffic, and you just kind of bopped around, and I thought that was great. The bar was fantastic all the time. If you wanted, it gave you free water, but it also had the beer, the non-alcoholic beer, the Pepsi, the Cokes, whatever you wanted. The atmosphere was fantastic. And I think the other big rave thing that happened was the extra table space on the side table beyond the playing space. And I think that was a huge hit, Steve. Huge hit.
I had more compliments for the side tables than I did for the terrain that we spent a year making. So I think clearly quality events have a side table. The side table isn't going away, so that's definitely staying. So everything seemed to go very well. Very pleased. Just need to make a bunch more tables of terrain. If only Mantic had some kind of new range of terrain out specifically designed for Kings of War.
If only.
If only such a thing were shipping.
I should suggest that. I'm going to suggest that to them.
Yeah, good time to ask. Super. Yeah, and it was so we were at Mantic Friday night. That was other than the unbearable heat, that was a really interesting experience. And there's not many companies you can just sort of turn up and the owner of the company will just give you a tour around. We had I tell you what, we had a lovely time talking to Ricky, their the head of the resin casting. It was a lovely chap, and he was very generous with it with his time. And that was a very interesting conversation. And then we were just sort of let loose in the warehouse. We were just sort of wandering around the warehouse. So it was very, very, very interesting and a lot of fun. And then we had Steve. We had an extra day Monday where we went to where did we go? So we
started at Warlord.
Yes, perfect. We had the tour, the organised tour. That was great, really interesting. They were lovely and friendly as well. To be fair, we then went to meet the original game designer of Kings of War,
Alessio Cavatore. Yep, we went to go visit Alessio at his company, Riverhorse.
Thanks, Mark. I was stalling there because I'm very tired and I couldn't quite remember. And honestly, that was one of my absolute highlights of the weekend. He was a lovely chap, and he was so generous with his time, and he made us feel so welcome. That was really special. Thanks ever so much, Mark, for organising that. That'll stay with me for a very long time. And then we went to Mordor, and we had lunch in Bugman's just after Warlord said don't have lunch in Bugman's. The food's rubbish. We went for lunch in Bugman's, but actually it was pretty good.
It was wonderful. The food was great.
Yeah, it was decent. And we had a lovely time, but no part of me was tempted to get a Forge World model or anything like that. I picked up some Slain stuff in Warlord, which is very cool. I'm so impressed with the resins after we saw their resin casting team and their lovely chap Peter. So so I've already painted up some Slain stuff. It was interesting to be in Mordor. There's obviously it's a whole different order of magnitude to what Warlord and Mantic can do, but it was a lovely experience. But I think we had a good time. We did a quick recording in Bugman's. Got to meet your friend Walt, Mark, who was very nice. Also very nice. Thanks, Walt, for
Walter Simpson.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And he was kind enough to buy us our tickets to go through the exhibit halls, which was really cool of him. That was super, super nice of him. So but the staff there were extremely friendly, even when I was complaining bitterly about GW Games.
That poor sales guy, Chris, is telling them all about, I play Mantic Games. I don't play GW Games anymore. And he's trying to convert this GW employee to play Mantic.
He was
standing on top of a 40K demo table. It was classic. We really intended to go in and play Kings of War on one of the tables in Mordor, but we didn't bring our models with us, so it would have been super inconvenient. But so sorry, Ronnie, we let you down. Maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year, huh? But also the whole weekend was so intense that honestly, I completely forgot about. It was
Oh yeah,
things
I
would
mean,
have
I
needed to
didn't.
happen in advance. It just didn't occur to me. It was
Yeah, I didn't stop.
Well, let me
I
tell you about
landed and boom, 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 ran around dinner. This, that, pass out for 6 hours. And then I hear, let's meet for breakfast at 8 o'clock. And then for breakfast at 8 o'clock. Boom, 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 boom. It was non-stop. I did get a little break at Steve's on Tuesday night, which was very nice. Hang with the family. That was lovely. So, but it was, for a bucket list trip, it did not disappoint. I had such a fabulous time. Thank you to everyone. And I mean, I didn't get to see everybody, but everybody that came up and said hi and, just talked about the podcasts and, stuff like that. It was a fantastic, fantastic trip. I'll never forget it. And just wonderful.
Yeah, it really was.
Let me tell you about. I took Mark to the Bos. Was it what's it called? Cosford RAF.
The RAF Museum. Yeah.
And let me tell you how adorable it is to take an absolute fanatic around a World War I, World War II aircraft museum. It was hilarious, right? So we went in and we were quite late, and we're going around this museum, and literally every corner, Mark go, "Oh wow, is that a Junkers T-43 TX Mark II?" And he'd run up to it and he'd take a photo. He goes, "Oh wow, it's a Mark I." And then he'd tell me a little airplane fact. And then he'd turn around and go, "Oh wow, is that a Messerschmitt PF 2932? I think it is." And he goes, "Oh wow, it's the last one in the world." And then literally for an hour non-stop, because it was a breakneck speed. This was the whole hour. He was like a little boy in a candy shop. It was hilarious.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I wish I was there. I'd have loved that. Amazing.
And his knowledge of airplanes is like, you think Mark's knowledgeable about war games or what? Let me tell you, when it comes to airplanes, the guy, he's like telling you about the fuselage and the construction and wow. He's like a mega fan. It was absolutely awe-inspiring to be in the presence of.
Amazing.
Thank you for taking me, Steve. That was literally a tour of a lifetime. So if you ever come to the States and I get the chance, I'll take you to the Dayton Air Museum. But
yeah.
Fantastic. Super. Okay, guys. So let's just quickly go over the numbers, because obviously on the Mantic Universe podcast, we're obsessed with the meta, right? So let's go over our little meta. I think I'm using the word meta wrong there, but whatever. So overall results. So we're including friend of the pod, Gad, even though he was not on CockMUP, which was our team name. So Gad, is this true? Did Gad really come in 22nd?
22nd, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
He's been training under Pannilore, you see.
He killed 7,800 points. So hilariously, despite how badly I did, Gad came to visit me about 6 months ago. We played 3 games and I won all 3 games. And I've been saying to Gad, I'm not really good. And he thought at some point, there was some kind of scam going on. It's like one of those YouTube videos where, someone's pretending to be an old woman and they do gymnastics or something. But no, it was just something happened that weekend that we'll never be able to properly explain. But whatever it is passed and gone, and Gad is coming in at 22nd, and I'm down among the dead men. And then so Gad was 22nd. Clem was 39, which was fantastic. 4 wins and 2 defeats. Clem killed, not far behind on kill points, 7,685. Bang. There we go.
Cheers, Clem. That was awesome, buddy.
Yeah.
That's all my dice.
Oh, but I think Clem was being a little bit too self-deprecating, because every time, so how did you get on, Clem? Oh, yeah, 1, but my dice were too good. I was a little bit embarrassed. And it's
definitely true. So it also helps to play an army that I know, because I've been playing this very
it's basically
for a year.
Cheating, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's basically cheating,
It is. And then the dice, obviously, it's a dice game. But yeah.
It is a dice game.
So when I walked past the table, he was like, "Oh, let me tell you my dice, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, and I looked at his opponent, and I said, let's just test it out, shall we? And I picked one up and I rolled it, and I rolled like a 1. I'm like, no, not the dice. And that was it. That was my TO intervention, just to check that he wasn't cheating.
No, quite rightly so. Yeah, I think it was so I came in at 104th, and I killed less points, 5,670 points. I think I was doing okay going into day 2, so I got 2 wins, a draw, and 3 defeats. But I unfortunately I lost my last 2 games. It would have been lovely to win one more game, but game 5 I was against a player who's definitely better than me, Andy, lovely bloke. He's very obviously a better player than I am, but it was extremely tight, and I was fancying my chances. And I jumped on his honor guard. So Shobik plus 2 other units, did 30 something wounds, hanging off the honor guard. Of course, we double won, and that was the game. So I'll be honest, that really nearly broke me. I was a bit salty there. I kept saying to him, "Oh, but it was so finely poised," and it was I'm sure I have to apologise to Andy because I was I was salty. Yeah.
Just a little bit salty.
So salty. Yeah.
He's one of the famous Smiths, is our Andy. There's a lot of them around.
He was absolutely really super chap. And Mark came in just behind me at 114th, but you killed a lot more points in true Rifford York style. 6,920. So that's a great job there. Murdering Heather's parrot or whatever it was.
Still have no idea how I killed that much. It sure didn't feel like it, let me tell you.
It felt it when you were fighting against me, buddy. You felt killy, very killy. And Peter Swift, Pod All-Star, who we drafted in at last minute to the COCMUP team. Very glad to have him. He came in at 122, his first ever tournament of any game, and 5,640 points killed. So fantastic. And worth mentioning, Tim Hewitt was the countercharger.
Cheers!
And it was his first Kings of War event. That's amazing.
Right.
Congratulations.
His very first Kings of War event. So it was fantastic. So I'm coming off the stage with him, and he was just so excited and just, it's just like, this is my first tournament. It's like, that is awesome. That's what this award is all about. So very, very cool. Steve, did you have how the teams sorted out? Because I couldn't find it. I had it at one time, but then I lost it. So I know we didn't end up in last place.
No, we did okay. I think Clem pulled us up by bootstraps, but we did okay.
There was a screen. Actually, we moved the tournament from my control to Elliot's control, and he's not moved it back yet, so I can't see. But I think John Guns did. He pulled it out on Fanatics, didn't he? I was just trying to find it. He did it by just adding together the positions of players rather than the points they'd won. I'll see if I can find it, but I can't remember where you guys ended up.
No, we weren't last. That was the best part.
No. We were respectable.
A little bit below half, but we
good. May have finished above, and I may be remembering this wrong. Apologies to your listener. I think we finished above something like King of Hearts or something like actual legitimate teams.
Oh, we did. Yeah, that was the best part about it. Yeah, we did okay. Thank you, Clem.
Yeah, well, thanks, Clem. Super.
You can take my dice.
You're going to get a T-shirt that says that, Clem. Thank my dice.
No. Clem is going to get some Baron of Dice shortly. And you can too, dear listener, if you go over to the Baron of Dice website and put in the code that we mentioned earlier in the pod. And they are beautiful, beautiful dice. Super. So Clash of Kings. I think. I mean, there's. We could talk about our games. We're in for 2.5 hours now. Should we move on to the Pannilore section, guys? What do you think?
Sure. Why not?
Wait,
we got a shot.
Just a second. No, just a second first. Steve, you've looked at all of the lists, right? What's the top 3 of the filths that you've seen?
Oh, by filth you mean? Well, yeah. See, the list that won were quite balanced, really, weren't they? I think for me, and this is an interesting conversation for another time, perhaps. But filth is a list that's so disgusting that it doesn't matter who takes it; it still crushes face. I think looking at the top armies, Peter Noack that won had a pretty balanced halfling list with a lot of shooting, to be fair. But the Basilean list, John Quayle's list, has been on -28. It's a very filthy, very fast list. Javier, who came third, had a very typical ogre list, which are all very filthy. Then you've got a balanced Trident Realm list, a balanced Salamanders list, a balanced Northern Alliance, 2 balanced Northern Alliance lists. So I got to be honest, balanced lists seem to win the day. Some high quality shooting backed up with some fast units and then some solid infantry support.
Sounds healthy for the game, doesn't it, Steve? To be honest,
right? And that's my big takeaway from the amount of lists. If you look at the top 10, even the top 20, there's a heavy Northern Alliance presence, probably because they're the newest army and people wanted to try and play with that stuff and people weren't used to it. But actually, there's every time. I'm delighted to say my friend Arthur, who's from France, came 14th with his Ratkin. There was a disgusting goblin list that Mario ran, which was 12th. A really gross elf list, right? James Mitchell came ninth. But it was very, very balanced. Lots and lots of different armies in the top 20. Tons and tons represented. Even a dwarf list down there somewhere. You'd think there's been talk about all of the undead, but then a lot of the top players took undead. So it's really down to the player rather than the list, I think.
Steve, what happened to all the Scorchwing spam that we may or may not have been expecting?
People didn't take. There was a lot. Fast flying was definitely a strong choice, I would say, which is what Scorchwing. They're fast flying shooting. They're even worse. So no one's made that list here. Maybe they don't want to copy. I don't know. There was 3 very fast flying Basilean lists in the top 20. So that's a very strong list. But they're not undefeatable. even so, John Quayle came second. He lost to Tom Robinson. He lost to Tom's what did he take? Northern Alliance. But he won his other games so thunderingly well. He 25'd a lot of other players that he ended up second above Tom, who ended up sixth because he lost quite heavily in the last game to Peter. So, fast flying is still very strong, and Scorchwings is still a pain in the ass. Does probably need adjusting, but in general, I think people in the UK, maybe they're more restrained. I don't know. There wasn't, Paul Burke took all flying. I don't know. What do you want me to say? I don't know. It's just, I think the game's in a good place. I think you can take one of those spammy, flyy, shooty lists, but if you come up against a really good player with a really balanced list, you're in trouble. That's what I'd say.
What do you think? So I think, honestly, that people in the US are smarting. I think they're frustrated that there's been this huge and so successful tournament in the UK. What's their backlash going to be? What are they planning? To one up the UK?
I disagree with you. I don't think our US friends are like that. I think there maybe they're feeling envy. I don't know, mate. If they are, in which case I'm really sorry. But all I've had in my messenger is people saying they want to come. I think they want to go bigger.
No, Steve, you're spoiling my pretend animosity here. Mark, come on, tell us how upset people are. They're
they hate me. I've had so many death threats, and I think.
Yeah, but to be fair though, Steve, they were unrelated to Kings of War.
So I think we have to reflect that in the US, the only reason they haven't done this already is distance. Yes. Distance and the cost of travel, right? Masters with Best of the Rest as a single kind of gathering of gamers is getting up there already. I think they want to go bigger and better. The next ones I think is in Washington. Is it Washington?
Yeah. I think it's going to be at the Nova Open. So.
Right. So that has got the added, you have to pay to get to Nova Open, but it's a good place to travel to. So you're going to see some good numbers. I think the game's just on the up and up. I think in the US, they've got a lot of competing metas, and the geography is so large that it's quite difficult if you're in an area with few Kings players to get into. For me, I can drive an hour and I've got 40 players that I could play against. For them,
and it's fascinating, isn't it? Because in the UK, if you're going to drive an hour to play a game, that feels like a really long way. Whereas
Really
I'm sure
long.
in the US, an hour, that's where I go to pick up my milk in the morning or something. I don't know, but it does somehow feel different, doesn't it?
Exactly. So I think, there's that reflection. So I don't think, it's not the same. I think it's just a great, the success of Clash is just a great encouraging sign for the game in general. And I'm really hoping things get bigger and better. I hope they take it as a challenge. They should. They should feel embarrassed that little old England gets 150 people.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking.
They need to up
This
there,
is what I
up their
wanted. This
game.
is what I wanted. They're humiliated by this.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Show us how it's done bigger
Regretting
and better.
the
America.
Boston Tea Party. This is
And if they do it,
now we're
then
talking.
I will come to that tournament so they can rub it in my face, and I'll have a great time just to really spite them. So
Perfect.
There you go.
Yes.
Well, get ready.
Perfect.
Get ready. Lone Wolf 2024. So I already heard there's the very first player to sign up for Lone Wolf 2024 was a UK national who I believe had won the tournament in the past, if that's any hints for who's coming over. And as a matter of fact, I was having this conversation this morning. So
Big PW. I love it.
Yeah, so it should
Can
be.
we talk about the hobby standard? Have we got time? I don't know how much time we've got left in the pod, but we really need to talk about hobby standard because that's something that I'm really passionate about.
Please do, Steve.
About how unbelievably ridiculous it was, to the point where we've got now to the point, and we had some interesting chats online about the hobby standard where we've got some painters who are so good. Some people were like, why am I even bothering painting? Because they're going to turn up and the prize goes to Chris Walsh or Paul Welsh or Dan Reed, and these armies are so
as it does.
So they're like they're straight out of the pages of White Dwarf circa 1995. They're just breathtaking. They're just so good, and they're better than that. Actually, they're even better. So what we did at the tournament was we created some Judges' Choices Awards for armies that were within the realms of reality, but we loved them. We loved them so much. And we gave out 5 of those awards, and Mantic gave a voucher to each of them. The hobby standard, there were armies there which would have won any normal tournament's painting competition and didn't get a look in. That's how crazy it was. Like I won painting awards and my army wouldn't have got a look in, right? That's how good it was. There was display boards everywhere. There was like beautiful basing. Everything was themed. There was glorious armies, and I just blown away by the hobby standard. I've reached out rather optimistically to a bunch of hobby manufacturers to say, look, do you want to sponsor our tournament? Because look at this stuff. You've got 200 odd, absolutely hobby focused gamers. What better place to kind of force your stuff into their hands so they choose it? Come on, be our sponsor. Now they may ignore me. But I just
ignore
think
you. But and while we're talking high quality, get over, dear listener, to Baron of Dice's website and pick yourself up some beautiful dice, which
I'm doing
will
it right now.
always roll 6s when you need them to. I'm certain of it.
Did Clem use them? Is that what happened?
No. He has some on the way, but he's not got them yet.
But I agree with you, Steve. Like every single army that I saw was just really good looking. Like also a lot of Mantic armies. I think. Like I think it was better than 2 years ago.
Me too.
Yeah. Really going in the right direction. And yeah, just great looking armies everywhere. That's just not every day that you see 150 armies like fully painted to a good standard and so on.
Can I please give a shout out to a friend of the pod, Tom King, who came over from Ireland, and while I'm saying hey Kevin, because those guys are wonderful, but Tom's goblins were just beautifully painted, as you say, Steve. An army that would normally win an award doesn't even get a look in at this. Okay, there's 150 people or 148, but the standard was just so high. But I mean, Tom's army was beautiful. It was absolutely stunning.
Absolutely. No, he's a great guy. And I've played him before, and he's just a really lovely chap. The Irish continue. Really glad they came over, and they're looking to come and go for again. But yeah, another beautiful army. They just under them.
Absolutely love those guys. Yeah, 2 years ago in Cardiff, I played against Kevin and his Abyssal Dwarfs, and it was the last game, and we just had so much fun. You know, we were exactly on the same page with what we wanted out of the game, which was just to laugh at each other's misfortune and just it was a really, really good time. So it was great to see those guys again. Super. Right. Enough of all that. Let's talk about Pannilore. Mark, what can you tell us about Overdrive? Sorry, Steve. Sorry.
Oh, I just said, oh, right. Yes. I was having enthusiastic agreement with you.
Oh, perfect. What could be better? Mark, Overdrive.
There you go. Overdrive. Well, I mean, I took the opportunity to read the lore that was in the rule book that gives us a little background there. So that's what I'm going to focus on. So, but Overdrive came about when the Dreadball ratings started to drop. And the Dreadball gaming board, I believe is their name, needed something to boost ratings. So why not more violence? Sounds like a good idea, right? So Overdrive kind of happened as like a halftime game between the 7th and 8th rush. So, and it's basically played by the giants of the game of Dreadball because the coaches were moving away from the giants and the giants didn't really have much to do. So they needed to make some money. So why not bring them in? And so it gave them a way to make some cash. So it became so popular that it actually became its own thing. More giants, more ways to play, and more violence. The story in the rulebook really follows Matt the Machine Thomas from being recruited as a coach and in his initial training match all the way through the final of the inaugural Orion Overdrive Cup. So it's actually a good little read. So in particular, I like the story where he learns to coach, and I cannot pronounce this word, Sinchentdouche something, I don't know. It's the big floaty jellyfish thing. So, and he's doing this match.
I think the point is we're supposed to not be able to pronounce it like Cthulhu, you know.
Cthulhu, there you go. So, but it was kind of cool in the story where all of a sudden he just started hearing voices in his head, which was the jellyfish talking to him, you know, like on how to use it in the match, you know. So, and he's like, you know, give me this order. And so that was pretty cool. So he kind of got stuck with it, you know, during the drafting mechanic. And actually, he ended up being able to move one of the other players off a scoring spot, and they ended up winning the game. So that actually is pretty cool because you can see that, you know, this becomes one of his solid players, you know, going through. So Alpha Simeon, I think, being his favorite. So and with Overdrive always looking for new ways to play, they introduced this bomb mechanic where it would pass between the players. You have to get really, really close to have this bracelet where the bomb would transfer over to them. And if the bomb goes off on your player, you lose 2 points or something like that. So it definitely impacted the outcome of the final. So there's this final thing. Alpha Simeon is trying to go after this Teraton and pass the bomb off, and the bomb hasn't gone off yet. And as he gets really close to the Teraton, the other coach tells the Teraton to pull in all the arms, legs, head, and everything else, and just be the shell. And Alpha Simeon's down there, and he's got no place to hand off the bomb, and the bomb goes off. So they end up losing. So bummer. But Coach Matt will be back for more in the next season. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of broken up among the rules, and so it was very nice lore to read.
Can I just say, Mark, I love the way you presented that. It was brilliant. I very much enjoyed that. And I imagine Steve has absolutely no idea what we're talking about.
I was right up until you said Mark, and then I just phased out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he typically does that. You know, here's my name, and that's the cue to phase out. So
we've got to give Overdrive a go. We really do. I'm looking forward to it. Looks like a lot of fun.
I picked it up only because they started releasing sculpts in the vault and unreleased sculpts, and they also have the cards. So it's like, okay.
Can you still buy it?
What's that?
Can you still buy Overdrive?
Yeah, I did. You know what? I went online and I said Overdrive, and I looked and I found a copy for about $20. And so, of course, in order to get the free shipping, I had to add on a bunch of old school metal Mantic models, which made me very happy. So I got a copy of that, some old dwarfs and some old elven archers. And so, yeah, it was really, really cool. So I can't say I picked up a second one, but I'm glad I got a copy, and I'm going to print up some stuff hopefully someday in my mind, and we'll give it a try.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, we've definitely got to give it a go, Clem. Fantastic. Super. So we are very, very pushed for time. So let's we've got loads of listener questions. So I think we'll have to kind of charge through these if everyone's okay. So John Paul is asking one thing you liked in your respective lists and one thing you would change with regards to Clash of Kings UK. So one thing I liked was very much the fighty Enslaved Guardians with the Blessing of the Gods. They were amazing. In terms of negatives, yeah, I think everything kind of did its job as best it could. What about you guys?
Well, I mean, Steve gave me my list. So for me, I needed to learn to use the Rift Forgers. I think they were a big key to the list, and I kind of missed out on that. And learning how to use the Host Shadow Beast to its maximum effectiveness. I got better with it as I went. And I think Heather was the recipient of some of that knowledge as I went through. So, but it was very cool. I actually got to sit down and explain to her how it worked. So that helped me a bit. And yeah, there was nothing really in the list that I didn't like. So it was a very good list. I just needed to learn how to use it better.
Clem, what about you, buddy?
Well, I mean, the fun thing about my list is when we started Salamanders a year ago, you and I thought, well, I want to have some surge and I want to have some fast, nimble stuff. And that's how I built my version 1.0 of the list. And that's literally the very same list that I took to Clash of Kings. And so I didn't change anything from this very first version. And I think it just works really well. I mean, it does what it's intended to do. Some of it I can still probably improve, like getting better surges situations. There are definitely some situations where the list just can't work. Probably also I would need to get a bit better at it. Like when I played against shooty goblins, it's quite a struggle. And when I played against the all-flying Basilians, it was also quite a struggle. But in both cases, it was against much better players. So that might also be one of the reasons for the struggle. So yeah, no, overall, I'm really happy with the list. I don't think I would change anything to it, because if you remove something, then it changes a lot of the balance, the internal balance of the list. And yeah, sure, it struggles against shooty lists, but that's how it is, right?
Yeah.
You just have to play it slightly differently, like play with the terrain a bit more, play more on the scenario, and maybe not win but get a draw or just a minor loss, like still score some points. But yeah, no, I'm very, very happy with the list for the year, and I hope my next year army will also be as much fun. So yeah.
Yeah, same as me, Clem. I mean, definitely the weakness is the player with me, not my list. That's definitely true. If there's one thing that I probably thought didn't perform as well as it maybe should or could have for the points, my upgraded Pharaoh, but I always knew that probably isn't a competitive choice. It's just I just love that special rule. Just think it's super cool. So I kind of went into that with my eyes wide open, to be quite honest with you. Super. I'll just keep things moving, guys. So Scott Lewis, hey Scott, what are your hopes for the Twilight Kin storyline? I think let's park that one for now because we have so many questions, and let's give ourselves a chance to think about that a little bit. John Paul again, what secrets did you learn at Clash from Ronnie? Well, we've kind of discussed that a little bit. There is one thing that I won't mention I noticed at Mantic. because I think it's probably smart not to mention it. Yeah, I mean, I think we've probably got the missing army. We think is probably Sylvankin, or what was the other one? Guys, help me out.
Herd. So we'll see.
Thank you, Mark. We'll see. Yeah, absolutely. And we found out in this episode that Night Stalkers are definitely coming to Firefight, so that's really, really great. So Peter Podolstar is asking, I guess my question would be, what was one really high point favourite moment in the tournament for you? He's obviously referring to Clash of Kings. And while there may be a few to pick from, what was a low least favourite point? Yeah. So high point was, Walt speaking German unexpectedly, weirdly enough. That will stay with me a long time. Low point for me was probably my last game, I don't want to go into details, but I didn't have a tremendous time in my last game, if I'm completely honest. I'll just pass over to you guys.
Well, for me, I think the fun high point was I don't remember which game it was, but at some point I had like a Greater Fire Elemental. I could go for a long surge and get a flank. And like I kind of overcommitted to really get one target unit dead. And so I roll all my dice, I do tons of damage. I'm like, oops, I shouldn't have overcommitted. That's perfect. The right moment to get a double one. Roll the dice, route them, roll the dice again, double one. And we just laughed our asses off because it's like, yeah, that's exactly when you get a double one. And so obviously the next turn you get a rear charge and it gets really ugly. But it was really like a fun, like you predict a double one. Yep, exactly what you get. So that was fun. And low point, I'm not so sure. I think in the games that I've lost, the two games that I've lost, I thought I had it kind of under control until the very end, and then things just started to really fall apart in turn 7. So that was a bit annoying. That's all.
What about you, Bug?
Well, my highest point was my last game against Heather Armstead. It was so much fun. I never laughed so much. She had her pirate-themed ogres, and we just lined it up, played punchy, and had a blast. And I to the point that we were nicknaming models, and they got their names, and then we nicknamed one of her ogre bullies Blender because he was he was unbelievable. So hopefully Heather's making a little medal to put around his neck because he deserves it. Her giant, we named Kakaw. So that was fantastic. And we just had so much fun. It's exactly what I needed on game 6. And glad that I had the opportunity to meet her. It was a lot of fun. Low point, boy, that's going to be really hard to do. But I lined up against an Abyssal Dwarf army. And I looked at my army and I looked at that army. And I said, I've lost this game, and it didn't even start. So I went to Steve afterwards and said, hey, what happens if, this army does this, and this, because, he totally figured out, I guess, what the flying army was going to do. So I don't know. I just looked at it. I know Abyssal Dwarfs and pretty well, maybe it was self-defeating for me, but it played out exactly like I thought it was going to play out. So I had a unit get caught from the back. I was getting sloppy. I was a little morally defeated in that particular game. But I think going into that, it was 95th, and my goal was to finish in the top 100. So, I guess that'll be my low point.
Super. And next question, guys. Are we coming back? Asked by Scott. Will we be returning to Clash of Kings? Steve, obviously, yes, because he's the organizer. I think, Clem, it's fair to say, Mark, I very much hope you're planning on coming back. Yes, definitely we're planning on coming back. Whether it'll be next year, I'm not sure. It will depend on dates and other things and obviously money. But I would love to.
Yeah, same for me. One detail, my wife's birthday is later in September, and so I would hope that Clash would be earlier in September, because otherwise it's a bit more complicated to negotiate the weekend. And coming from abroad, it's a big expense, and so doing that every year is not given. I hope, Steve, you manage to negotiate good deals with joint tickets and housing. Maybe some student housing is free for the weekend or something like this. You get a good price, because I think that would motivate more people to join as well.
Yeah, so there's you can make student accommodation available with the ticket. I think the price was around I want to say £70 plus VAT, something like that, per night, which is kind of comparable to a cheaper hotel price. The difficulty is for me is that we have to guarantee we're going to fill the rooms, 50 rooms for 2 nights. So I have to guarantee that we're going to do that. When I think
at that price, I'm not convinced you'll guarantee it, to be honest.
And that's some of the problem, isn't it? So it's cheaper than a Premier Inn, which was next door. But yeah, it's tricky for me because I don't want to sign off on $7,000 of cost if people don't then fulfill, because then I've got to find it somehow to fit it. So it's a tricky one for me.
No, it's probably not cheap enough. Yeah.
No, that's exactly it. That's not cheap enough. Yeah, if it was 50 quid,
right,
that would make a big difference. 70 quid, to me, that doesn't sound like a great deal, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that was why I didn't take it this year. I think, if we move to a venue that is anyway, another chat for another time. But accommodation wise, I mean, people did find accommodation and it wasn't overly, pricey. There were Airbnbs and such, so fingers crossed people will be okay next year. But the university accommodation at that price is a worry for me. So I'll see what they offer me.
Next question from Idiot Proof Dalek: should I bring more Jaffa Cakes next year? Yes, I love as I discussed with you. I love Jaffa Cakes. So yes, he very kindly gave me a couple of Jaffa Cakes. I flipping love Jaffa Cakes. Anything you change in your army? I'm going to skip over that one for now. Sorry, Paige. Overall experience, we've definitely discussed that. Who has the best Betty and how much luck did it bring them? My new Betty was fantastic. If people don't know what this is the lovely John Guns and his wife make these sort of a bag that you can hang from the table, and they're fantastic and handmade and really, really nice. And there's a few options of material. I think Mark had the best one because it was Clash of Kings 23 branded, and I didn't realize that was an option, although I think it was a custom option. But that was a great idea, and that was a beautiful Betty. I just wish the Betty's so the metal handle that kind of allows it to hang from the table, I wish that metal arm thing, I wish that could fold, because it was a bit tricky getting it back in my baggage, as was everything else, to get it on the flight. But other than that, it's I can't recommend it enough, to be honest. That's a fantastic idea, and they're really lovely things. So next question, Stuart Hastings: where is a good starting place to become immersed in the world and lore? I've recently bought the Ice and Shadows starter set and would be keen to learn more about both the general world and Northern Alliance. Welcome, Stuart. Guys, what do we think?
Learning more about Northern Alliance. So in terms of books, as I wander over to my shelf of books, I think, the books that I would definitely recommend people read. Let's have a look. We've got Ascent of the Goblin King is fantastic. Rise of the Celestians is fantastic. Broken Alliance
is always a big favourite of yours, Steve, as discussed.
I wasn't going to...
Sorry, move on.
Fire is good. Steps to Deliverance are very good. There are a number of good books. Don't read that you can read. I think none of them have directly addressed the Northern Alliance yet, and I think that's by design because they're doing the current campaign. But here's what I think: if you wanted to get to grips with the Northern Alliance, the best place to start is with the current campaign, which is online. It's got 3 stories online, which are excellent. The first 2 are written by Rob Berman, and
they are excellent. I'm going to chip in. They're fantastic.
All you've got to say to me is it's written by Rob Berman. Yeah, he's fantastic.
A bit better editing. There was a few kind of editing areas that jarred a little bit, but the content of them is by and large very, very good as well. So if you want to get to grips with Northern Alliance stories, check out the Shadowed Horizons. What's it called?
You're nearly there, Steve. We've run out of time, so just keep it moving. We mentioned it previously in the pod.
Yeah, kingsofwarthegame.com/Shadow Horizons. There you go.
Perfect. Super. Cool. So Danny Graves, hey Danny, has asked, now that you've seen Clash of Kings, the Twilight Kin release, and been to Warhammer World, if you won megabucks on the Euro Millions, if you had the amount of investment cash to throw at Mantic, what would you do? I'd make a spaceship combat game, I think. Just for the fun of it.
I would push through the 10mm Kings of War game I've been discussing with Matt and Ronnie.
I would do the same, and I would also probably support local gaming communities, figuring out a way to have beacons of Mantic fun all over the world. I would give a job to our good friend Gad, for example, and all of the other Gads that are out there making their community play Mantic games, because what Mantic needs now is not a lot more stuff. It's more people playing the games. Like, we need to spread the good word, I think.
And obviously hire us to be full-time MUP podcast makers. That'd be good. That'd be handy.
You guys are really nice. I'd buy a yacht and live a life of luxury. What are you guys doing supporting all this wargaming stuff? Come on.
Steve, what do you need a yacht for? You live in Birmingham.
We got cows.
Buy a barge at least. Live on a barge. Sounds miserable.
A downgrade, isn't it? I'm going to buy a canal barge.
I won the Euro Millions. I'm moving out of my house to live on a barge down at the freezing lock. Dream big. Perfect. Good. Dave Fanning, what if any would be your go-to dish to cook when having people over for dinner? So when we do the gaming weekends, I'll normally do something like a chili or like a lentil curry, or maybe a shepherd's pie or a cottage pie or something like that. Something you can just bang in the oven and cook the day before, and it's keep it in the fridge and it's ready to just pop in the oven and you're good to go. So you can spend most of your time gaming. I think we'll just leave that one there.
I'm going to say takeout pizza because
takeout pizza, always a good option.
Yeah, who wants to cook?
Friend of the pod, Mo Gaddafi, best moment of Clash. I think we discussed that at length. And then the last question, we've got through them all. Bob Nelson, hey Bob, should we set up a dating service, which is put in sinister quotes, for foreign wargamers for next year's post-Clash liaisons? I'm going to say no. But what do you guys think? A dating service in quotes. It sounds sinister.
Yeah, that could make my wife stop me from coming.
I think you mean like the team matchups, right?
I don't know. It's Bob. Bob. We'll have another go next month. You just can you kindly clarify your question, and we'll have another crack at it next month. Yeah. Super. So guys, we're over time. We haven't reviewed command protocols yet, so we're going to be even later than normal with that.
Well, there's always next pod.
There's always the next pod, exactly.
And we have such an awesome guest for the next pod. It's actually better that it's drifting to the next pod.
That is exciting. Yeah, no, that's a fair point, actually. Yeah, fair point. The listeners are going to be so disappointed now when we're sort of like, it's a new updated rule book. Yeah, we like it. What are the changes to units? We don't know. So all that to look forward to the next pod, dear listener. Guys, anything to touch on before we call it a night?
Thank you to Ronnie Renton for joining us for the first time here on the Mantic Universe podcast. Thank you to Steve Hildrew and his entire team for such an awesome event. And they said, would I come again? It's between Lone Wolf, UK Clash of Kings, and the Alamo. So one of those three will win.
Oh, God, Mark, if you come back, I'll have to come then. That's okay. Let's put that out there. If you're coming back to Clash of Kings next year, I'll come back to Clash of Kings next year.
There you go.
I love that you guys think it's optional for you guys to come back. It's absolutely mandatory. I will take no.
Oh, you guys are close. I'm not close.
Hard. Yeah. Yeah,
I've learned so much on this trip. I could probably do it like I do a Lone Wolf trip. So I will have to figure all that out. But yeah, definitely. I had such a good time. And if you're on the fence about going to the UK Clash of Kings, take it from somebody who did it, okay, and flew 3,800 miles or whatever, okay? It was so much fun. Just go. We have such a fantastic community. It was such a fantastic event. And I know we've talked about it on and on and on. And, Walt even came in from Australia. And that just shows you how good of an event it was. It was so much fun. And there were a lot of people, because I was so busy, I didn't even get to see, like, the Orange Wonder, Andy Ransom, etc. So, it gives me a reason to come back next year. But really, it was that good. So seriously consider about coming. It's a lot of fun.
Perfect way to end it. Thanks, dear listener. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.